for a week.
Ooh, no Jane show next week. It's Bank Holiday Monday though coming up.
Yes.
Can you believe it's the end of August?
No.
I can't get my head around it.
And it's 2 years since we moved into this warehouse.
It's insane, isn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely
I
insane.
don't know where that time's gone.
No, I have no idea whatsoever. I'm just going to check I haven't got the sound on everything because, you know, something starts ringing or making a noise in general. That's quite irritating, isn't it?
Oh.
And I suppose better check we're connected. Me leaning on my pile of fabrics, my beautiful wares.
Fabric.
Nothing says I'm ready for a weekend away like leaning on a pile of fabric, does it? Let's have a look and see if you can all see and hear us and check we've gone live because that's a thing.
That's helpful.
I have a worry thing going on YouTube, but it does look like we've been live for 35 seconds. So, hey, hi, good morning. Fingers crossed as well. Yep, we're all good on Facebook. It says, morning, girls. It's your mother.
Hi,
Of course it is.
Mum.
Hi, Kate. She might be the only one watching us, Jane, but there is someone watching us.
Thank goodness
yes.
some others, eh, Gems?
I know. Thanks for letting us know, Kate. It's always good to see you. Jimmy's here as well, says good morning, everyone. So
Hi,
that's
Jimmy.
nice as well. It's telling you that today Natasha's going to bring you the curvy and fabulous bag. It's an absolute massive fib, to be honest, that is. So I'm going to change that now.
She done do that. She did that
She
yesterday.
done did that yesterday. The curvy and fabulous bag was this here and that there green stripy one. It was both curvy and fabulous. Like our good selves, Jane.
Yes.
Yeah. She got a bit annoyed with me because she said I'd said that she was not curvy or fabulous.
No,
what I
we
actually
said
was,
she was fabulous.
She did not have our curvage,
No.
but that she was fabulous regardless.
Yeah, we said you are fabulous, but you don't have our
Ample curves.
curves. Most people might say it was fat. but we
Oh,
call it
wow.
curved.
No, we don't use the F word.
Rubenesque.
We do not.
Rubenesque is
Yes.
the word.
We don't use the F word here.
No.
We're just in the wrong era, Jane.
Yes.
Because once upon a time, there was many beautiful paintings are painted of ladies reclining.
Yes.
In their wonderful curvy selves. Today, Natasha will not be bringing you anything, so you can ignore that there. I'm changing it over. Today, lovely Jane, our
It's
Stitchy
me.
Witch,
Morning.
will be bringing us the Bonnie Blue quilt. Jane, tell us about the Bonnie Blue quilt while I pretend I did my job properly and
It's
update this.
come by its name because the block is called Bonnie. And it's quite a traditional block. It's very straightforward, it's very simple. Quite often Natasha will throw a challenge at me and say, can you make a quilt with half meters? Because we have a lot of our half meter heavens. And this one, this size, uses 3 half meter pieces. One of our designer prints and 2 plains. You can obviously make it bigger. The more fabric you use, the bigger it gets, obviously.
Yeah.
But I've also had recently a couple of emails from customers that are primarily dressmakers and they're a little bit worried about how they start doing their quilting. They want to make a quilt, but they're a little bit worried about all the quilting rulers, rotary cutters, all of that. So I thought we'd go right back, you know, wavy picture, and go back to the basics. Start from picking your piece of fabric up, what you do with it, how you cut it, how you hold your ruler, how you hold your rotary cutter, all of that. Now, for those experienced quilters of you, and there are many of you out there, I know.
There are, we know.
This is a really lovely quick make. You would make this in a weekend easily,
Yes.
completely, from start to finish.
And we
It's
love a
lovely.
weekend make. We all love
Yeah,
a
because
crack on and get it done
sometimes
made.
you just want to just make something quick and simple.
You do.
And this is what this quilt is. So if you're an experienced quilter, you can just sort of sit back and relax and say, yeah, I know this. But if you want to have a go at making your first quilt, this is a good place to start. And it looks
Excellent.
rather fabulous, I think. It's a lovely block.
It's beautiful.
And
it's
it
really
creates a lovely effect.
It
So
does. That's a really nice size as well, Jane. You know, if you want to do a little lap quilt for a small
Yeah.
person or a large person, whatever.
Yes.
It's a lap size, isn't it?
yeah, if you've got someone that uses a wheelchair, that's ideal for placing over their knees, just to keep their knees warm when you're out and about. You can have it over the back of your chair just to slip round your shoulders in the evenings as it starts to get cooler. Great for a play mat.
Marvellous.
Table centre. Stick it in the middle of your table.
Nice. But Jane, if you had got 3 metres of fabric,
Yes.
could you just make it bigger?
Yes.
Excellent. That's what we like to hear, isn't it?
You know, if
Options is what we have.
obviously it's a half metre of each.
Yeah.
There is a little bit left over of the plains. It uses more or less all of the half metre of the pattern fabric.
Okay.
But double your quantity, you get double the amount of blocks. So if we haven't cut the kits yet, we've cut a couple of them,
Yeah.
but we haven't cut them. So should you wish to make it bigger and have, let's say you want to make it, I don't know, 3 blocks by 4, you'd need 3 kits. So if you order 3 kits, we'll cut it continuous because we can.
Ah, brilliant.
So you'll get your pieces in continuous pieces.
Excellent. Well, that's what we try and do, isn't
We
it?
try our best.
And if you have got a half metre heaven that you see in today's collection, in fact, when you look at today's collection, loads of half metre heavens in there. They're not all going to hang around forever. Natasha's got ideas for them, projects she wants to use them in. A lot of them will be getting archived soon. So if there is a half metre heaven you've been on the fence over, then it might be a good day to get that before it disappears. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. There's some lovely fabrics in those.
There really are. What I will say, however, though, is if you wanted to make today's quilt, maybe you're looking and thinking, oh yes, that half metre heaven, I can justify it now because I've got the perfect project. If you pop it in your basket, add a half metre of any of our plains. It could be white, it could be green, it could be whatever colour, but just pop on your note, on your order, please swap, and then the colour of plain that you've put in for a fabric that will go with my half metre heaven. Then Jane or Natasha or myself will take a look at your half metre heaven and substitute a plain in. If you've got a preference, and maybe you say it looks like a
Fabric shop.
A jumble shop of things. Yes. Let's put it here.
Yes.
I'll keep passing you things as they get loaded.
We
We
really
popped some of
have
these up
come,
last week, didn't we?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we really have come to the end of the cottage cloth,
We have.
and it's sad because I love this fabric.
You might have had dibs on it.
I might have
before
had a
it's
bit,
gone
yeah.
into bolt end.
So there are some pieces that are like this 1.25 metre piece of this beautiful blue. Then there are some 3 metre pieces, like this beautiful plum colour one.
Yeah.
And I think this one's called, is this Chili R1 or is it? Might be
Is
something
R1
else.
pink? No, pink
Sort
fizz.
of pinky,
I
pink
want
fizz
to say
maybe.
R1 might be pink fizz.
Pink fizz. There's a 3 metre piece of that. We've got pumpkin here, which has got a 2 metre piece left on. Look at that. That's beautiful. These colours are so rich, and you don't get the effect on the camera.
No.
I don't know if we can go close up, Gemma.
Of course we can.
Because it's a printed fabric, but it's got this like slub effect on it. Oh,
Oh no.
that's a blank
That's
screen.
a black screen.
That's not good.
Oh, is that what you guys can see as well? Because we can see a black screen. That is not ideal. The only way to fix that, Jane, is to switch everything off and back on again, which is not a thing we want to be doing.
No, I don't think that's
So,
going to
Roger, I'm
work.
going to get you to tell me whether we have got an actual black screen or whether that's just my screen showing a black screen. Because that is not all the fun in all the world. I'm going to go back to wide here and have a little look. Shall we have a look at
If
my
we
overhead
go
cam?
Overhead, and I
Oh,
raise
well,
it
that's not so
up.
bad.
Aha.
You raise me up.
Can you see that
Brilliant.
lovely texture on there?
Right, this puts a different spin on today's show, James. That's
It
okay.
does, yeah. I don't
That's
think I can
all
do
right.
it with a sewing machine, but there
Nope.
we go.
It's all right. It's okay. No
So
problem.
you can see there, it's got this. It's printed. It's not. It's
Yeah.
not woven in, but it's got this beautiful sort of like linen-y effect. So all of the fabrics have that lovely texture printed into them. It's really rich and gives it a sumptuous feel.
The camera isn't working. Well, Jane, I'll let
This
you
is
chat
all
to
the good
everyone for a
fun,
minute.
isn't
Oh,
it?
I'm just. We had a power cut this morning, everybody.
Yeah, we did. Everything
And
went.
clearly, it's made this camera quite cross. I'm just going to give that a little nudge in. I'm going to do all the things I'm not supposed to
Yeah,
do.
just wiggle the wires
press
and
all the
stuff.
wires and wiggle them and things. Don't mind me, everybody. I'm just slightly off screen having a twiddle.
We've got
God,
this
that sounded awful,
beautiful.
Jane.
We've got this
not
beautiful
what I
piece
meant.
of. It's like a tealy green colour. There's 2.9 metres of that left. That's beautiful. These colours are really rich. They've got a lovely autumnal feel to them as well. I just think, you know, they're great for your stash because these are the sort of colours that you could use in place of a plain, and they give your quilt a little bit more texture, movement to it. This lovely green. Look at that.
I think we'll find our close-up camera is still black, Jane.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's.
Because I can put
Oh.
a little preview here.
Oh no, it's all right. I'm looking at something else. It's wrong.
No, unfortunately, I think today we should be operating without close-up cam. But in fairness, that's better than if we had no overhead cam
No, that's true.
or no
Um,
wide cam.
I think we'll manage because I'll just be sewing straight lines,
Yes.
so I won't be doing anything fancy today.
It
so
just means you won't
we'll
see
manage.
Jane's little stitchy
Little
close-ups.
stitchy close-ups will be
But
fine.
like you say, if it's just straight lines and you're going to show everyone on overhead where we're going, I think we can manage.
We can
perfectly
manage
fine.
that, yeah. So those are those.
Yes,
We've got others.
there are others. They are being loaded.
Let
they
me
will
just
all
show
be
you the
appearing.
colours because there's
Just
some.
keep them separate, Jane.
separate. Look at
Can you
these.
imagine?
Look at
That'd
those
be
rich
words.
tones there. There's greens. Are you going to fall off your stool there,
No,
Gemma?
I'm just shifting around, moving myself
Don't
out
make me
the way.
worry.
Trying to get out of the way while you know.
Beautiful, like bronzy brown colour there. The charcoal, which is black, but more of a very deep grey than a black. Beautiful green tones, and then this another lovely blue in there. So there's some really gorgeous fabrics. They'll have had a cheeky discount on them because Gemma does that when it's at their bolt ends.
I do. Do not muddle them, Jane.
No,
Do
I'm
not
going to
mix or
put
muddle.
these ones that
Okay.
you've done up there.
I'll let you off.
Okay.
Yes, in front
It's
of
all
our
right.
fabulous makeover there. And Natasha's new
New
glasses
curve.
holder, so she doesn't lose her glasses holder. Now, we have people watching.
Good.
We've been described as gorgeous curvy girls
Lovely.
and voluptuous,
Yes.
which I'll take as well. Good morning, Jane and Gemma. Oh, lovely quick quilt, says Joy. Yes, Joy, lovely quick quilt.
Quilt, yes.
We like that a lot. But Jane's going to talk to us about some of the basics as well, which will be great. So we're not just going to go, oh, look, done, bye.
Yeah.
Off
We'll
to
go.
Cav.
Yeah.
Sylv says, nothing wrong with generous curves, more to cuddle, built-in padding and free insulation.
Yes.
We're not getting cold.
And we're
We
harder
just
to
keep getting
kidnap.
too warm, don't we?
Yeah.
We are
kidnap
harder to
'cause
kidnap,
Can't
so
lift us. Yeah.
True. Martin's around. Biscuits for everyone. Cakes. Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
We
There has
like
to be a
you,
biscuit
Martin.
mention.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Super.
Yeah, there is a lot of people saying about a black screen. Yes, we do. We know we do have a black screen.
Yes.
It's only
You
our
won't see it
close-up
again.
cam. You won't see it again because we're not going to use it. There was a power cut and clearly it's upset the camera. I do just about everything else in the world, but apart from switching it off and back on again and then seeing if it works, that will be the limits, I think, of my technical attempts
Yeah.
after the show.
And probably not a good idea to switch it off and on again during the middle of the show.
Lots of
the
people
best.
saying, I can see you now. You're
Good.
back.
Yeah,
we
we're
know,
here.
because this one works.
Yeah.
This one works. That one doesn't work.
Yeah.
Sadly, unfortunately. Martin says, I see cakes and biscuits. Always, always. And Julia says, incoming song for other camera, Back in Black. I'm not
yes.
trying to sing that one as
No.
much as I love AC/DC.
We could do the guitar riff.
Yes, but me murdering AC/DC, no,
No.
we're not doing that on the show. I think I'd get shot. Natasha might have a limit on how much singing I can get away with. Ooh, Kate Blanchard says, if anyone on YouTube went very blurred after the black screen, I reloaded and it all came back into focus.
Dear.
Oh, my mother's around. She says, both looking lovely as always.
We love your mum.
We do. She's lovely. Right, I'm going to go into overhead, Jane, because we've got this week's half metre heavens. Now, I have loaded in today's collection tons of half metre heavens. They're the ones that we've got from previous weeks. Some of them we've got some stock left over because we loaded loads. Others we've found a unit or two here and there and we've loaded them in for today. The ones Jane's about to show you, okay, are not in today's collection. So the ones in today's collection you can buy, grab them, buy them, fill your boots. These go live at midnight. These
Yes.
are tomorrow's deal.
Fastest fingers first.
Yeah, now some of these are one-offs. There's
Yeah.
quite a few one-offs in here and some you're going to go, oh my gosh, when you see them.
Mhm.
Because even we didn't know they were around. Quite annoyed with ourselves that we haven't kept them, but we're trying to be nice and let everyone else have them. But I'll go to overhead and I'll let Jane talk you through those.
Okay. We're coming, I don't know about you, but it's just starting, isn't it, to feel a little bit of autumnal in the
Wash your
morning.
mouth out, Jane.
I
I'm
love
not
it.
done with
I
summer
love
yet.
it. I love the misty, moisty mornings. I love that.
Did you use the word moist?
No, you
Natasha
didn't
doesn't
hear me
allow
say
that
it. You didn't hear me say that.
It does not allow that word.
Misty, mellow mornings.
There we go. Jane,
So-
I'm not done with summer yet. I adore autumn. Absolutely
No,
adore
I'm
autumn.
still
but I'm not done
Waiting for
with
some
summer
summer sunshine.
All right, so
Hopefully
just-
I'll get some next week.
yet. Putting that in there.
So you want to might want to make your little treat bags.
Nice.
So there's some skeletons here. Skeletons. This is Ghostly Gatherings by Deb Strain from
It
Moda.
is.
And we've put that with your very basic black, but it does it justice.
Yeah. It was the
Dancing
one.
skeletons are lovely. You could do your 4 from 2 little bags. They'd make great trick-or-treat bags, wouldn't they?
Yeah,
Now they
for
use
anyone
fat
who's thinking,
quarters, so you
what
could
on
make
earth is
double
Jane
up.
about? What's she going on? What's she saying? There is a pattern. If you look it up, 4 from 2 fat quarters, and they're little gift bags, and they're absolutely fabulous. And we used to have some kicking around the studio in a untidy fashion, but then Jane and I went all OCD and made it all clean and tidy.
There is one here.
Here's one, Natasha, or you made earlier.
Yeah, we did it in Christmassy
Christmas one,
fabrics
look at
because they're like little.
that.
They make great little treat bags. I mean,
They're
you could
lovely.
fill these with sweets and have them ready to hand out to
Yep.
people that come to your door.
Especially if you know
You
you've
could-
got grandchildren, godchildren, or whoever coming,
Yeah,
then you can have a special bag ready for them with some treats in.
you could make them as table favours.
Yep.
You could make them with any fabric and give them as teachers' gifts.
That is the 4 from 2
you'd
fat
fit
quarters.
a nice little soap in there and
Yeah,
a
definitely.
little body lotion or something.
I know lots and lots of people that have done this, and it's a great way to gift.
If you're having a children's party as well, they're nice little treat bags to give at the end of the party.
Really nice. Natasha did that, and the children have still got them and are still using them. They love them.
Well, they're great for keeping little treasures in, aren't they?
Mm-hmm. Certainly are.
There's only one of the dancing skeletons.
No, just the one.
Now we've only got one of this, and this is
Cactus flower.
Yeah, mouth's not working. Cactus flower.
Still haven't found those teeth, Jane, have you?
No.
No. Cactus
Flower
flower
red. And we have put it with a piece of apple, which is a beautiful, vibrant green, which just picks up all the stamens in the middles of those
Exactly.
flowers.
Now you can see it's a bit wrinkly on the end.
This is literally
It's
the end of the bolt.
Now we had this
Can you
as a
see
half
how
metre
wobbly it
heaven.
is?
Yeah, we had this as a half metre heaven before. It was super duper popular. It sold out. Clearly a piece got squirreled to one side, probably for Natasha's stash. And we spotted it and went, oh, lovely. Pop
I'll
that
have
out.
that.
Yeah.
Let you have it.
Yep.
So you might
She should have
find
moved
it's
quicker, shouldn't she? Should have
you
made something
might
out
find
of it.
it's slightly bigger than a half metre piece.
Yeah,
Just saying.
Yeah.
But there is only one of those.
there is. Just the one. Lovely bit of K Facet Collective.
We
and
have
actually, Jane, that'd look fantastic with some of the new K fabrics that have come in this week.
yeah.
So just bear in mind there are new, beautiful K Facet Collective fabrics. If you've not been around Monday, Tuesday, you've missed tons. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a second.
Yeah.
But the old Cave and the new Cave, you can mix and match those.
Yeah, they
They'll look
blend
beautiful
beautifully
together.
because he
Mhm.
uses a similar dye palette.
Yes.
This is our fabulous brassica. This is, what colourway is this, Gemma? Lost my
Orange,
label
I
now.
think.
Orange.
Yeah, I want to say it's brassica orange.
It probably is.
Oh,
There
there
it
you go.
is. Yeah,
There you
brassica
go.
orange. Gemma knows. She knows all of the cave fabrics off by
I do
heart.
try.
With amethyst, because that just pulls out this lovely purple in here. Now, Natasha made her beautiful pumpkins, didn't she?
She did.
There's one here made out of velvet.
But you can imagine. In fact, you can imagine having a velvet one and some out of this.
This has
Wouldn't
been
that look
blinged
amazing?
by Crystal Parade. Look, isn't
It
that fabulous?
Poppy at Crystal Parade had a good go at that. Again, Crystal Parade did a beautiful show on Natasha's birthday. And I know we've had a couple of questions along the way of how do I do this, how do I do that? Having seen things like Bombay Sapphire bottles and such.
Yes.
Sales at Crystal Parade is the email address, but we can get that across to you by email if you've got a query and you want it
Yeah, if you
sending
need it.
across. But Poppy will be able to furnish you with all the sparkles. So if you see this half metre heaven and you think, I'm going to get the Halloween pumpkin instructions and some velvet in purple and some bling from Crystal Parade, I don't blame you.
No,
Make a beautiful,
lovely display for you.
yeah, beautiful display.
We've got some Tilda here.
Gorgeous.
This is Flower Tangle Blue. And this is the last piece. Again, it's a bit wobbly around the edges because it really is the end of the bolt. And this is with a piece of aqua.
Beautiful.
Isn't that lovely? That just really brings out the turquoises
It
and the
does.
greens in that.
We did do this as a half metre heaven. It sold out instantly. This
Yeah.
was, again, another half metre we found. We underload. We found we got an extra one. So we have squeezed that one out.
Now this piece of Tula Pink was sitting on the shelf,
It was.
just minding its own business, and we went, we'll have that.
Again, end of bolt
You can
piece.
see it's a bit
Wibbly
wobbly on the
dibbly.
edges, the bits that need a press. And we've put that with our school grey. That'd make a rather fabulous bag, wouldn't it?
Really would. Really would.
Or a cushion for a teenager's room.
Yeah.
You know, the teenagers that don't like colour.
And these teenagers, Jane, I tell you, my goddaughter, she had all her room turned round into being black with little accents of gold here and there.
Oh, I bet that looks fabulous.
She must have very been, well, she was under the age of 10 at the time.
Yeah.
She just decided she wanted everything black with a little bit of gold.
Now, this is the last piece of Tula Pink Moon Garden Kabloom. Look at that. And again, I think that's with, let me just check the label, amethyst.
This is a treasure.
Isn't it?
This is some proper treasure.
That's rather fabulous. That will make a beautiful bag. If you did
Really
one of
will.
our beach bags with that, because it'd show the full boof of the fabric. Love the bees on this. So that's
Stunning.
Kabloom Dawn. One piece, so again, you'll have to be fast as fingers first. And then we have it as well in Dusk, which is a rather fabulous
Oh, I adore
tealy
this one.
turquoise colour. And then we've put it with a raspberry.
For my money, this one and the previous one, and I did say we'd briefly talk in a moment about the new cave fabrics. Natasha used those to make her curvy fabulous bag. She did. That one and this one.
Yes.
But for my money, these two
Oh gosh,
Kablooms,
yeah.
there needs to be one of these. And this can be made out of your half metre heaven. So you just need to make sure that you've got your half metre of feature fabric, half metre of plain, so that's that sorted. You need some Styleville Fix, which we sell by the metre. You need some round bag handles and a magnetic clasp, wasn't it, Jane?
Yes.
And that, I believe, is all you require for that
Yes.
make. And obviously your curvy and fabulous bag instructions. So I just mentioned this casually because those
Look at
last two, and then
this.
I would
This
also
one.
say this one could do with being curvy fabulous bags.
This is another piece of Tula Pink from the Moon Garden collection. This is Night Owl Dusk. Now he's rather fabulous, do you not think?
He is beautiful.
And that is
He,
with a
she.
piece of apple.
Beautiful.
Let me just check that. Yes, it is apple. Just gorgeous. And I don't know if you could, we can't go close up, but there's a moon here, and the shading on that just makes it really sort of luminescent in a way. I love this owl's face. It's beautiful. Beautiful.
They're goading me, Jane.
Are
They're
they?
disappointed in me
Yes.
for my lack of singing Back in Black. Black is Black has been mentioned.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's going to be an
You can
earworm
do
for
that
the
one.
day.
Yeah.
Back to Black, Amy Winehouse.
Yes.
It's all going on. There'll be many, many songs sung today about the fact that our camera is not behaving.
This is another piece of brassica. No, this is curly kale. This is the new collection.
Right. I did say we'd talk a little bit about new cave, and here it is. So
This is curly kale dark.
we launched this last Friday. We did a show on Monday. Natasha did beautiful things, actually. She waved
Did.
around all of the cave on Monday, and on Tuesday she made the curvy fabulous bag.
What's the label?
But we have shown you all of the fabrics. I don't know, have you just wafted it onto the floor?
Oh, no,
Jane?
it's here.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, I just wanted to just double check that green.
That's all right.
It's
Chartreuse,
chartreuse.
isn't it?
Yes.
But the curly kale, for your brassica fans, I'm going to say it, I feel a bit naughty with this, but I think it's better. I
Yeah.
love brassica. It's one of my favourite fabrics of all time, but I just think curly kale might pip it ever so slightly.
Yes, just a little step
Yeah.
above, I think.
And the colours in this are absolutely off the scale.
Gorgeous.
You've got those beautiful deep magentas, the blues, the turquoises, that purple, that black background gives it such depth as well. The richness to this, I just love it. Love, love, love.
It is gorgeous.
It is. I'm really struggling to choose a favourite from these latest fabrics, but that one I think might have it. You watch me change my mind over the next few fabrics,
Yes, you will.
Jane.
Now
But we
this is
have
another
half
one
metre
of the
with
new
you.
ones.
Yes.
This is, let me just,
Tropical water
tropical
lilies.
water
Yeah.
lilies. And this is the red colourway. And we've just put that with a splash of lime. Just pulls out these greens in the middle of the flowers and on the edge of the petals on this one. Isn't that gorgeous?
Gorgeous, gorgeous.
Beautiful, vibrant fabrics. And this is tropical water lilies again. This is contrast. Look at that.
It's so impactful, isn't it?
It is.
It really is. And every fabric I see with these large, impactful prints, I want to turn into a curvy and fabulous bag.
It's another one of the bags, like the beach bag and
Yeah.
the three-tone bag, that just show off the fabrics to their best, don't they?
It's going to be a favourite. It's going to
Yeah.
be one of those ones that we go back to time and time again. If you want to make a really impressive gift as well,
Yes.
because it just... We will show one, Jane. I can't keep rattling on about this bag and not show everybody. Here we go. So the reason we are so in love with it, it sits up. So it's made with Styleville Fix, which is a fusible foam. It has the round handles, these very beautiful decorative tabs. She's put in a magnetic clasp, but just think, that is such a well-made, impressive-looking bag. You know, if you gifted that, people would really be saying, hang on a minute, did you honestly make that? Yes, I did, yes. There's a pin in there, look. Just forgotten one. Got hidden.
Yes. Well, it matches the flower.
I got it. But it's just great. We're all a little bit in love with this. We're quite impressed with Natasha on the quiet, but we won't tell it to her face.
And if you're a crafter and you make things for craft stalls to sell, to buy more fabric, to make more things, you're very welcome to use our Brabham patterns.
Yep.
Providing, you know, you just give us a little credit that it's a pattern from. And you're not going into mass marketing.
Nope. No, exactly.
Making hundreds at a time.
Nope. But if you're a craft maker, go ahead.
This is Sailor Valentine.
Yes, now Natasha keeps calling this Sailor Jerry, like the rum. And I have to keep saying, no, it's
red.
Valentine, darling.
Now, I chose this fabric as my second colourway.
You'll
see it in a moment, the kit that I've chosen. Natasha has put this with a piece of Royal, which is rather lovely. It pulls out all this lovely purpley blue that's in here. It's gorgeous.
It is, isn't it? It
This
is indeed.
It's all different types of seashells and lovely textures to that. It is a lovely fabric. And then, well, this one. We love the curly kale. We love the blue colourway. So, you know, what's not to love about this one? This is just fabulous. I love the sea colours of that.
Again, this is up there. So I'm really struggling to choose between my curly kales. It's trying to choose between your children. It's not a thing I can do, I don't think.
Really. Now,
because look at it.
we put that with a cadet blue.
Yes.
It's quite a grey blue,
Yes.
but it just works really nicely with this sort of soft lavendery colour and the teals in there. It just pulls it all together.
And also, putting that grey blue in there just somehow enhances the vibrancy
Yes, it
of
does.
the colours
Yeah.
in the fabric, because it is a more muted blue.
We could have put anything with that. We
Really
could have put
could.
teal, we could have put jade,
Yeah.
even our lavender would have looked beautiful with that. Aqua, yeah.
There's loads that we could have put with this.
You could have a field day. Even magenta, because it's got this little bit of magenta in the background.
Hey, that would be good.
So those are tomorrow's
Yep.
Half Metre Heavens.
So those go live on the website at midnight tonight, or a minute too for those of you that are a little bit savvy and know to sit there clicking refresh. When they go live, that's it, fastest fingers first. We do not have any more of some of these, so grab them while you can. And don't forget to show us what you make with them.
Oh yeah, we love to
It
see
might
what
be
you're
this.
doing. We love to see what you
It
make.
might be a curvy, fabulous bag.
Yeah.
If you do decide you want to make today's make from it, and you know you're going to need an extra half metre, because Jane will show you the kits in a moment, but today's make is a half metre heaven plus an extra plain. Okay. If you decide that's what you want to do and you buy a half metre heaven, again, don't forget you can pop probably a half metre of white or just something that is not specific into your order, and then pop on the notes, please switch whichever it is that you've put in for the best colour to go with, and we will select a fabric to go with your half metre heaven for you to make today's quilt.
Wonderful.
It's all right. But to start us off, you have done two kits. One
I have.
being this one, and
Yes.
one being today's demo, Jane.
Yeah.
Great.
Now, the one I'm going to demonstrate with is a bit of the new cave, because
Yeah.
I couldn't resist. And it's a very different colourway, so
Right.
you'll get a very different effect, which I think was nice for you to see.
Brilliant.
So basically it's 3.5 metres. And I have put together with this one, which is the Dina Designs Ladybird Garden, and this is Ladybird Blue, because there's little tiny ladybirds in there, with some mint and vanilla. So I wanted a creamy fabric, but the vanilla is more of a yellowy tone, which I felt blended nicely with the fabrics that we've got.
It complements it beautifully,
Yeah, it
doesn't
does.
it?
So that's kit for the one behind us. So those 3 fabrics made the kit behind us and the binding. You would need extra fabric for your backing, but that will do your quilt top and binding.
Excellent. Jane, you need 1.25 metres of standard width for your backing,
Yes.
is that right?
The actual quilt itself is only about 32 inches square.
Okay.
Yeah, I got that right. Yeah, I just had to stop and think then.
Yeah,
I've written
it
it
was,
like,
yeah.
but
32
then your
by
bright
32.
brain suddenly goes, is that really right?
We always put this information in our instructions
Yeah.
as well, so you have
So
got that there and on the product page.
Your width of fabric is about 42 inches.
Mhm.
So a metre would be just a bit too squeaky, I feel. I like to have a good 2 inches all the way around my quilts, even when I'm quilting them by hand. So I said 1.25 metres of your standard width. You don't need extra wide because the width of fabric will be enough. So that will do the backing, and a piece of wadding that is approximately 40 inches square, 42 inches square.
Great.
So again, you'd need 1.5 metres if you were ordering it from us, because we only do it in 1/2 metre increments. But then you've got lots left over for your extra other makes.
Brilliant.
This is a bit of the Sailor Valentine red. I love this. I love the seashells. I love the vibrancy of the colours. And I just thought, let's see what happens when we use this fabric. Because this is the sort of fabric that as you cut it, you're going to get a different piece each time because of the vibrancy and the colours and the shapes. It'll be interesting to see how it comes out. I have put that with orange. And then I thought, right, let's go dark, let's go black.
So you're going to get
So
a really impactful quilt.
It's
from
going to
this.
be very dramatic,
Great. Love a bit of
but in
drama.
a lovely, warm, cosy way, I think.
Fabulous.
So I am going to start from the very beginning. As Julie Andrews says, it's a very good place to start.
It is a very good place to start, Jane. Perfect.
So when I make a quilt, once I've chosen my fabrics, I do not wash them. I don't wash them.
No.
That's subjective. There are reams and reams on Facebook quilting sites about whether you should wash your fabric or whether you shouldn't.
Mhm.
In the olden days, when I was a girl, fabric wasn't as dye fast as it is now. That's not to say that you won't find some fabrics do run a little bit. And the best thing to do, I find, is to get a cotton bud, dip it in some water and just run it on your fabric. If the dye is going to come off, it'll come off on that cotton bud. So then possibly give it a wash on a cool wash just to get any excess dye out. You may find sometimes with batiks that happens because they've still got a bit of the wax on maybe from when they were doing the printing and stuff. So batiks sometimes wash those. I don't bother because I'm too excited. I want to get on with my project.
And also, when you wash your quilt, Jane, colour catchers are our friend.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And I'd say that regardless of whether you've checked
Yeah.
for colour fastness or whatever.
And
It just makes sense, doesn't it?
if you've made your project and you think, well, I don't want to give this without giving it a wash first, because, you've been handling it, you've probably had it on the floor to pin it out and all sorts of things like that. Treat it like a wool blanket. So once you've made it, just wash it on a cool, gentle wash. That's what I do. But I don't wash mine very often. I mean, I wash them before I give them to somebody, but at home, they don't get washed, and it's not a weekly thing. It's probably once every 3 months, if that.
Or when something disastrous has happened.
Yes,
Jane,
when an accident's happened. So after I've got my fabrics, I will press them and I will treat them with a fabric treatment like spray starch, flatter,
yeah.
best press, whichever you prefer.
Jane, why do you treat them with something like flatter, best press, spray starch?
I do this just to stabilise the fabrics in a way. It helps, it gives a clean cut, and it prevents, I'm not going to say it prevents, it doesn't stop it, but it reduces the amount of fraying of the fabric. Some fabrics like to fray more than others. Sometimes you'll buy fabrics from the same collection and they react completely differently because it could be down to the base cloth that's been used. So that's what I'll do, is I'll give them a good press with the best press. Flat is wonderful because it gets rid of that middle crease. You know, when your fabric's folded on the bolts, you get that crease that's down the middle, and it'll have been there for a long time. It'll have been put on the bolt at the manufacturing process, wrapped up into a 10 metre or more bolt, shipped to the fabric supplier, where it'll have stood in their warehouse and then been shipped to the retailer. So it's been stood on the bolt, folded in half for a long time. So that middle fold is quite resistant to an iron sometimes. And your best press and your flatter are really great for getting that crease out of the middle. You also might find that at this stage you might want to use your steam on your iron. When I do my spray, flatter, best press, whatever I'm using, I do it on the wrong side of the fabric. Just because sometimes, particularly with spray starch, you get a bit, if you're a bit heavy-handed with it, when you press it, it can flake, like into white flakes. So if it's on the wrong side of the fabric, it's not going to matter. So I will do that with all the fabrics. And I've got 1/2 metre pieces here. Sometimes you'll have fat quarter pieces, but the process is the same for preparing your fabric. The equipment that you'll need. You're going to need your rotary, your self-healing mat. You're going to need a ruler, and you're going to need a rotary cutter. We predominantly work in inches with quilting, purely because the majority of the patterns come from America and they still work in yards and inches, which for the older of us is fine because we all know what yards and inches are. And it doesn't cause us any confusion.
I mean, that brilliant cusp there.
Yeah.
I was born in 81, so I remember. Because my parents were
I
still
was
using
just on
all inches and were like, what on earth, you know?
At school we were just converting over when I was at school, so I'm quite happy with both.
Exactly, we're all in a good position on this, aren't we?
Yeah. You can use your inches on your mat to measure your fabric, or you can use the inches on your ruler. Whichever you're going to do, keep it consistent. If you use the inches on your mat, carry on using the inches on your mat throughout the project, and the same with your ruler. I'm not going to tell you that they're different, but it's a bit like using grams and ounces. Stick with it. Whichever you're going to use when you do your recipe, you either do it all in grams or you do it all in ounces. Don't mix the two, just because you might find a slight variation.
I love that there's always a culinary reference with you, Jane.
You'd never know I was a trained baker, would you?
Never.
So, to start with, now I've got the luxury of having a rather large mat here. We don't all have a large mat. Some of us only have an 18 by 24-ish one. So if you've got a large mat, you can just put your fabric selvage to selvage. And you will see, and you can see here, by doing this, and what I like to do is I'll put my selvages together, and I'll hold my fabric up.
I'm going to give you a little camera angle there,
forward,
Jane, so that we can
yeah,
have a
because you
look.
can't see that.
There you
And
go.
if I put that fabric edge to edge as it's cut, can you see how that's twisted
Yeah, you can.
at the bottom? Now, that's nobody's fault. That's not your retailer's fault or anything for cutting it wonky. That is when it's put onto the bolt. So if there's anybody's fault, it's the people that put it onto the bolt at the very beginning of the process. So slide one of the selvages across until it's hanging nice and straight at the bottom and there's no twist in your fabric.
Okay.
And so if I lay that down on my mat again now, I've got this nice and straight, you can see it's about 1/2 inch. Some fabrics, it can be up to 1 inch, which is rather annoying, but it's certainly not your retailer's fault, so please don't say, oh, they've cut my fabric wonky. It can't be helped. If it's not on the bolt straight in the first place, you're just fighting a losing battle.
So Jane, if you don't do this step here, what will that mean for your quilt, for your blocks or whatever
Well,
else?
your fabric won't be cut square
Okay.
along the straight of grain, basically, and it will fray more. And you might get a slight twist in your finished product.
Okay.
It just makes life easier. You're more likely to get a better finish if you've got your fabric cut straight to start with. So I would, if I've got my big mat, I'll leave it folded in half like this. Always have the folded edge facing you. And I will straighten this edge up. Now, if I haven't got a full-size mat like this, I would fold my folded edge up to the top of my salve edge like that. We know that's straight now, so we can just trim that way.
Sure. The mat that we're using, Jane, is the June Taylor rotary cutting mat.
Yeah.
I think we've got one of these in stock currently, because they are one of those things, again, that come in. They are a considered purchase, but they come in, they go out, and then it takes us a little while to restock. So when we get these, they go. Jane, it's not a self-healing, squishy cutting mat, is it?
No, this is a different mat. It's a different hard-wearing mat.
Yeah.
It works in the same way. It will wear out eventually, and it will cut a groove, but it doesn't cut a groove as much, which is why we use it, because we do a lot of cutting.
Yeah. And it's firm, isn't it? So when you cut, you get a really nice,
you get a really sharp
cut.
crisp cut on it.
Yeah.
Your self-healing mat will do exactly the same thing, but it doesn't last forever.
No.
You will eventually, if you're cutting in the same place over and over again, you will cut a groove into your mat. So what I suggest you do when you're cutting, particularly when you're straightening an edge, and if you don't use your cutting mat as your measuring guide, just move it around when you're doing your cutting. So you're using a different place on the mat each time, just so that you're not cutting continuously in the same place. That will make your mat last longer.
Excellent.
What you can do with your self-healing mat as well is you can get little like foam pads that will clean it. So eventually, if you're cutting in the same place, you might get fibres of your fabric, particularly your wadding, going into the cut. If you use one of these little pads, they just wipe over the mat and they take those fibres out. And again, it makes your mat last longer.
But we have found here, haven't we, that we use this one that's in front of you in our commercial
because
setting.
It's hard wearing and it does last longer for us.
So as much as it's a considered purchase, it is a worthwhile investment.
Yeah, definitely.
For anyone who did want one, because I know we do get queries from time to time, this is the JT765 rotary cutting mat. It's 23 inches by 35 inches. So as Jane says, lovely big mat.
Yes. Storing your mats.
Yes.
Don't be inclined to stand it up against the wall.
I did that, Jane.
Yeah.
They go wonky, Jane.
They bow.
They do.
They will bow over time.
Yep.
Which will affect the cutting of your mat. Also, if you've got a self-healing mat, keep it out of direct sunlight. So if you cut at a window, because it gives you the best light, when you're not cutting on it, put it somewhere out of the way of the sunlight. Store it flat. I know people that stick it underneath their sofa out of the way when they're cutting, because if we don't have a dedicated sewing room and we're cutting at the dining room table, sticking it under your sofa is a really good place to hide it out of the way, and it keeps it nice and flat. Also, don't put your mug on it. You think, oh, this is a nice coaster, I can stick my mug on there, because any heat will warp it. I found that out once when I was going to a class, and when I came out of the class, I left my mat in the back window of my car on a nice sunny day, and I went the next day to get it out of the car, and it was all wobbly. You can make it go back by putting it into a warm bath of water, but it's never the same. It's never the same. So they are a considered purchase. They will last you a long time, but you do have to look after them.
Yes.
Rulers.
Oh, now we love a ruler. And I know that rulers have been a bone of contention along the way here and there, because we haven't necessarily had always plentiful stock. And two of our rulers that we will mention in particular have been out of stock for a good old while now. The first one's the one that's in front of you, Jane, and that is for your money, your bread and butter ruler, isn't
Yeah.
it?
If you're going to buy a ruler, it's going to last you a long time. Again, you need to look after it. If you drop it on the floor, the corners might chip off. But this is a Creative Grids ruler. It does have a hole in it there, so if you've got a hook in your sewing room or somewhere that you can hang it when you're not using it, that will keep it in nice condition. It's a 24.5 by 6.5 inch ruler. Now you might think, well, you know, I could get a 12.5 by 6.5, and yes, they're great and they will do the job. But if you're going to have a ruler, and you can, it's within your budget, get this one, because this will do everything. It's big enough to do a full width of fabric. So if you've got your full width going on there, it fits over that and it will do the job. It's got the 60-degree and the 45-degree lines on it, so it's great for your triangles and your bias when you want to do bias binding at any point. It's a Creative Grids ruler. It's got, I'm going to put the orange so you can see a little bit better on this because we're unable to go close up.
So Jane, just while you're talking about it, this is the CGR 24 quilting ruler by Creative Grids. It's 6.5 inches one way by 24.5 inches the other.
Yeah. It's Creative Grids. They've got these little like frosted pads on the reverse side of them that prevent it moving. It's not going to stop it moving completely. You still have to be careful when you're cutting. It's also got the frosted quarter of an inch.
Yeah. The non-slip grip.
Non-slip grip. And it's also got the frosted ½ inch on the other side. So it's got, the thing I love about the Creative Grids, it's got all the reference points on it. The white mark shows you the inch increments. The black dot shows the 1.5 inches. So whichever way round you have it, you know you're going to get the right cut each time. Now, if you are a little bit worried about the cutting, and I'm going to talk you through the cutting in a moment, but if you are a little bit worried about your cutting and you're worried about the ruler slipping because your hands aren't very strong, you may be a bit arthritic-y, you maybe not be able to stretch your hand out flat to hold the ruler down while you're cutting, your Stripology is going to be your friend. Now the Stripology ruler, this is the XL ruler, you can get smaller ones, but if you're going to invest in a ruler and it's within your budget, I would get the XL because again it will do everything for you. It's got grooves in it at ½ inch increments, and again, being Creative Grids, it's got the non-slip grippy bits on the back. It's also got very easy reference points, so like for here, the square mark on it here is a 2.5 inch increment. So every time you see the square, you can put your rotary cutter in the little teardrop shape there, and then there's a groove there that holds you in place until you get to the next point. If you want the star, that's every 1.5 inch. So if you cut in 1.5 inch strips, you just follow the star, as they say. Or if you want 2.5 inch strips, so if you've got a jelly roll pattern that you want to use, your Stripology will cut those 2.5 inch strips super whizzy quick. And again, you can do squares with it by turning it round, you can do your strips. It's even got the 45-degree and the 60-degree marks on it. The other thing I love about the Stripology the Quilters Creative Grids rulers is they've got a set of instructions with them, and on that set of instructions is a QR code, and that will take you to their YouTube channel, and they give a demonstration with every ruler. So not only do you have your paper pattern piece with the instructions on, you'll also get a visual, because some of us work better with a visual than we do written.
Yeah.
So being able to go to the take the QR code, or go to their YouTube channel. If you go to Google or whichever search engine you use and put Creative Grids in, it'll take you to their website, and you can access any of the rulers tutorials on there. So you've got your QR. Now, we always say keep this piece of paper with your ruler. Use one of your quilter's clips and just clip it to it, so you've got every one, because there's all sorts of different types of rulers with creative grids, and they've all got a little instruction booklet with them.
And they're great, aren't they? They really
And they're
are
really
great.
handy reference points. But not only do they put the QR code on the pamphlet, they're very clever, and they put the QR code on the actual ruler. So again, you've got that reference should you need it. If you need a quick reminder about how you use the ruler, that reference point is there. It'll take you straight to their YouTube video to show you how to use the ruler.
Jane, you mentioned people with dexterity issues, things like that. Now, I think most people know I have fibromyalgia. I have some osteoarthritis as well.
Yeah.
And I get the hand trembles.
Yeah.
It's not always the gin. And for me, it's a little bit like going bowling with the bumpers up.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry that my rotary cutter's going to suddenly go off because I'm having
Yeah.
a wobble, and that I'm going to potentially cause myself injury, ruin my fabric or whatever else. The blade goes into that slot. So it's just a matter of making sure when you're using it that you put the blade into the slot, that it engages. Sorry, we were going to show you, but Natasha's taken hers with her.
Yeah.
Have
Anybody thinks you've got prep to do.
I know. So put it into that slot. Once you know that blade is there, just make sure it's in place, and you're pressing down firmly with your other hand to keep the ruler in place, and you slide up. Your rotary cut, it's not going to go.
You're not going to
off.
wobble. The ruler's not going to move. You're going to get a nice, easy cut.
It really is a reassuring thing. Now, so for me, I'd say I use my strapology probably more than anything.
Yes.
I do have one of these, and I use it a lot. You use this majority of the time.
It does. I do.
Natasha, however, uses the Big Easy. Now, the Big Easy we don't have here to show you today.
The Big Easy is fabulous.
The Big Easy is the big brother of this one here. It's the CGR 1224 for anyone who wants to look it up. I know, again, some of you really wanted a Big Easy. We haven't had them in stock for a little while. It's 24.5 inches like this one, but across it's 12.5 inches. So it's pretty much twice the width of the CGR 24 here. So it's like having two of these side by side.
Yeah.
That's pretty much broadly what you're looking at there.
Yeah, it's double the width,
Yeah.
same length.
Natasha uses that load more than anything.
I was going to say, if you're a bag maker and you're cutting like 12.5 or 10.5 pieces, that is just going to make your life really easy. I'm just going to reach across you, Gemma, excuse me.
Of course.
I
So
thought we've got a big rotary cutter, but we haven't.
We have strapology in stock, and we have the other two rulers today on delayed dispatch. Now, in reality, that order will go in. If you place your order, I will let Creative Grids know exactly how many we need. That will go in straight away. I don't know that you're going to see much of a delay, to be perfectly honest. It'll get to us very, very quickly.
Dispatching.
And I think, actually, especially with the bank holiday weekend, by the time those get in, it's around the same time that we'd be dispatching them anyway. So
Yes.
just bear that in mind. We can get all three today.
Yeah. So, Matt, whether you have the June Taylor one or whether you have a self-healing one, your ruler. And again, we've all got different budgets, but if your budget allows, get the biggest that you can, ruler and mat wise. Now, rotary cutters. There are so many different types of rotary cutter on the market. There are different sizes, different handles, different makes. A rotary cutter will do exactly the same thing, whichever brand you have. Test them out. If you go to a local class or something like that, ask, because they'll probably have more than one type of rotary cutter, and they'll probably be able to let you have a little little go on them to see which one works best for you. I like this one, straightforward, opens up to cut, closes with the guard down when you're not using it. You can get them with a guard here and a little grip so that you release the guard, and then that opens and lets you access to the blade, and when you take your finger off, the blade automatically closes. It's also got that, which is a little stand, which is rather nifty.
If we ignore the stand, that is similar to mine. I like that type. It's a
Yes,
trigger.
it's a trigger one.
And Fiskars make one, which is the one we normally stock.
Yeah, and then You've got this one here as well, where you manually open the blade, but it's quite ergonomic. It's quite nice to hold. You can get a good grip on that. You can get others that are like a gun trigger, so you just pull it, and when you let it go, it covers the blade again. You can get small ones. That's a 28mm blade. They're great for small little projects, and particularly if you're doing curves. I wouldn't recommend having that for your everyday. It just takes longer. Obviously, the circumference of that is smaller than this is a 45. The smaller the circumference, the longer it takes to cut the fabric. And you can also get 60mm as well. So if you're doing a lot of cutting, get a 60mm, because again, it's a longer circumference, so it takes less time to cut things.
And Jane, another thing that I think deserves a mention, which I used an enormous amount in the early days before I got my stripology, is the Fiskars rotary cutter and ruler combined.
Yes.
The combo.
Would you mind popping that back in?
That's fine. So yeah, I absolutely love that. You have a plastic ruler, like a guillotine almost, isn't it? You've got a plastic ruler like this one with a rotary cutter built into the side. So you place and you slide the cutter up and it will cut your fabric for you.
Again, that's quite a nice way of doing it if you're a little bit unsure. And
absolutely.
And again, if you've got dexterity problems, that rotary ruler and rotary cutter system, you simply press it down, which engages the blade, and you run it across, so you don't have to grip anything. You're not going to cause pain in your knuckles or your wrist, your thumb joints, because it's very straightforward. It's just a straightforward movement by pressing that down. Rotary cutters. The rotary cutter blade is very sharp. Every rotary cutter comes with a guard. Get into your head, open the blade, cut your fabric, close the blade. Whenever you're not using it, please make sure your blade is covered. It's very easy when you're cutting a lot of fabric to put your rotary cutter down, put your fabric over the top of it, pick it up. Even through your fabric, if that blade is open, you will cut yourself.
Yeah.
It's really sharp, and it will cut you, and you will get blood on your fabric, which is really annoying.
It's really annoying. And you might have a little trip to A&E, which disrupts your quilting experience. No one wants interruptions, Jane.
Get in your head and you will hear me. You will hear my voice. You will hear me saying, open, cut, close. That is the mindset you need to get in when you're using your rotary cutter. Whatever blade cutter you're using, whatever way it opens and the guard works, open, cut, close. It's really important. I don't want you ending up cutting the top of your finger off.
No.
Change your blade regularly. They're quite easy to change. Some of them are easier than others, but they are very straightforward. It's usually a nut on the back that you loosen. If you do it upside down, you loosen the nut. The front comes off and the blade falls out. Very carefully, because even when it's dull, when you're cutting your fabric, it will still be sharp. Take your blade off. Now, if you slip your fingers underneath and hold it away from the sharp edge like so, you shouldn't cut yourself, but do take care when doing it. And then you just simply place your other blade over the top. Some of them have got notches on them, so they'll only go in one way. I would recommend as well, whatever rotary cutter you have, to try and get the blade that fits the rotary cutter, because obviously there's sort of it's a bit like a manufacturer's warranty. If something goes wrong with it and you talk to the manufacturer and they say, well, whose blade have you been using?
Yeah.
They'll say, well, that's why. And then you just pop it back on and tighten the nut again. It's very easy to change. I change mine after every project, which you might think is quite extensive. Obviously, I'm making quilts. If you're just doing cushion covers, then you can probably make 2 or 3 cushion covers and then change your blade. But when you're making a full-size quilt, I would recommend changing your blade after each project like that.
Jane, a new blade and a new sewing machine needle, they make all the difference to a finished project, don't they?
Always. Starting a new project, new blade, new sewing machine needle. So that's the basic equipment that you need. You need your rotary cutter mat, you need your ruler, and you need your rotary cutter. You can do all of this with scissors, but you'll need a fabric marker if you want to do it with scissors, and you won't get it as accurate with scissors. But they used to make them with scissors, so you know it can be done.
Certainly can.
Okay, so we've got our basic equipment. We've made sure we've got a nice clean blade in. We've lined our fabric up. We've treated it with our fabric treatment, whichever one we're using. We've lined it up. We've got it straight of grain. So if I was to cut this now, I can cut this width of fabric just like that because my mat's big enough. If your mat isn't big enough, as I said before, fold the folded edge up to the salve edge like that and bring it down. Just flatten that fold slightly. If you don't flatten it, what you'll find is that if you're cutting strips, they tend to bow because there's sort of like a bit of a gap going on there. So just flatten it slightly with your fingers. Now I'm going to use the line on my mat. I'm not going to use my mat for measuring, I'm going to use my ruler. But I'm going to initially use the line on my mat to find the shortest edge where I've lined it up. And I'm just going to line that up just over that. I'm looking at this line here. It doesn't matter which line you're looking at, but it's just to straighten my fabric. So it's just over that line there. I've got my folded edge here lined up with one of my horizontal lines on my mat. Again, it doesn't matter which line it is. If you feel comfortable bringing it right down here, so it's lined up there, you can do that. I'm just going to bring it up a little bit so you can see from the camera angles what I'm doing. So just over that line there, because I don't want to trim off more than I need to, I'm just straightening this fabric, so it really is, if you can get this tiniest slither, then that's what you want to do. You don't want to waste your fabric unnecessarily. So I'm happy that that's straight on the horizontal, and I've got all of my fabric, even the shortest bit is just over that line there. I'm now going to take the edge of my ruler and I'm going to line that up with my line top and bottom. You always make sure when you're cutting with a ruler and rotary cutter that you've got a bit of ruler at the bottom and a bit of ruler at the top, because when you're cutting you need to start on your mat against your ruler and you need to cut up and away from yourself. Again, I can't tell you enough how much you must cut away from yourself, and then onto the mat again against your ruler. If you start on your fabric here, you're not going to cut through the fabric all the way. You're going to have bits cut it that you haven't cut. So you need to start on your mat and against your ruler. Stand square to your ruler. So I'm standing, my hips are level with my ruler here. I'm standing close to my table, not standing back here where I'm going to have to do this and hurt my back across there, but over time I'm standing square and I'm standing as close to the table as I can get. I'm going to spread my hand as wide as I can. I'm lucky I've got big hands so I can cover my whole of my ruler. Making sure that my ruler again is still square up against the edges there. Spread my hand as far as I can against the edge, but my hand is in the middle of my ruler. It's not on the edge here, because if you're not careful you could put your thumb there, and then when you bring the rotary cutter off you straight into your thumb. So make sure your hand is out of the way of the edge. Because you've got inch markings and things on here, just make sure that it's at least ½ an inch away from the edge of your ruler, if not an inch. And you're standing over this piece of fabric with your ruler and you've got your hand spread, and you tip yourself forward slightly so that you've got the weight of you running down your arm, and that, even though you've got the grippy bits on your ruler with this lovely created grids ruler, that is really, you've got the weight behind you, that ruler is not going to move. You open your blade, you place your blade 45-degree-ish angle against your ruler. Just a nice comfortable weight so that your rotary cutter becomes an extension of the angle of your arm. You're not doing that because that's going to put strain on your wrist there, and if you do that you're not going to cut, because this part of your rotary cutter is just going to go against the mat and it won't cut. So it's a 45-ish angle. You don't have to get a protractor out and measure it. But it's a
Thankfully.
nice, comfortable,
Yeah.
keeping it in line with your arm. You can cut like that, but if you're doing a lot of cutting, your wrist is going to really ache over time. So you start at the bottom, nearest to you. You've got your hand spread nicely, you've got your weight leaning forward, so you've got your weight over that ruler. You start on your mat, just move that slightly, make sure I'm lined up with my line. Starting on my mat, and it's one clean cut up and away, back onto the ruler and the mat. Lift your rotary cutter up, close it. Do not take your hand and move the ruler just yet. Just pull your fabric away from your ruler to make sure that it has cut through. If your blade's a bit dull, you might find you've got a few fibres. If you move your rotary cutter and your ruler out of the way and you move your fabric, you've then got to reposition everything and line it up again. So just move your fabric first before you move your hand off your ruler, just to make sure you've cut through. If you've got a new blade in your rotary cutter, you should be able to cut through 8 layers of fabric with no problem. We've got 4 layers here. If you've got a big piece of fabric that you need to cut, I'm going to cut this now into 4.5-inch strips. So my cut edge, which was on my right hand side, is now going to be moved over to my left hand side. If you're left-handed, you'll do this the opposite way. So you'll start on the left and then you'll go over to the right. I want 4.5-inch width of strip to start with on this, to cut my squares. I'm going to line up, as we say, with the creative grids. You've got the marks there for you. So there's the 4.5 mark there, there, there and there. I'm lining up that lovely straight cut edge with that line on my ruler all the way up. Now I'm going to show you, if you've got a long piece of fabric and you've got a long ruler and you think, well, it's a bit too high up here to just put my hand there, and is that going to hold it down here? Well, it will with the creative grids because you've got the anti-slip, but with other rulers you might worry about it moving down here. So I'm going to show you how to cut with a long ruler and a long piece of fabric.
Great.
Start down here with your hand on your ruler, again standing square to your ruler, square to the mat, with your hand at the bottom of the ruler there. You've checked that it's still all lined up with that beautiful cut edge you made, and you're going to start with the ruler on your mat. I've only got a little bit of my ruler here, but I've still got ruler and mat to start cutting on. I'm going to cut up to the top of my finger there, not on my finger obviously. I'm going to stop. I'm going to move my hand up like that, so I'm walking my hand up. So I've brought my thumb up to my index finger and then walked it up. Spread my hand again as far as I can. Carry on cutting and then do it again to the end. Off onto the mat against the ruler.
Jane, when we taught our SJ this, we called it Incy Wincy Spider.
Yeah. I'm not going to move my ruler, I'm going to pull my fabric. Now you can see there it hasn't cut through, and you can see it pulled from under the ruler, so I'm just going to move that back. I'm just going to go through. Now this has happened because there's a dent in, a cut in the mat, not because my blade is dull.
We've had that mat since we first started.
I was going to say, sometimes when you cut, when you do a lot of cutting, even on this mat, it's going to get grooves in it eventually, and that's what happens. If you're cutting over a gap in your mat, it won't cut through. So I've got that strip, and I also know I need 2 other strips from this, for this pattern, so I'm going to cut those at the same time. These are narrower strips. Straight up there, you can see I just did that in one cut then, because I know that this ruler is not going to move. I don't like going back and having to cut again, but this is what happens sometimes. Just line that cut edge up. And you can see I'm not worried too much about where my fabric is on my mat, because I'm using my ruler to cut with. If I wanted to use the mat, I would make sure that my cut edge was lined up with one of my vertical lines, and that my fold was on the horizontal line, making sure that it was nice and square on my mat, so that if I wanted to use my marks on my mat, I could just line that up top and bottom and work from there.
Jane, we're having lots of people saying that we're getting lots of top tips today.
Yes.
Martin made a very valid point. You should do Top Tip Tuesday, Jane. Where was Top Tip Tuesday when we thought about what we were going to call the week?
So
typical on a Wednesday today.
Yeah.
Wise Words Wednesday.
Wise Words Wednesday. We're now going to cut this into squares.
Yes.
I'm just tipping that over so I can see all of that selvage. One of your selvages on your fabric will have all the details about the fabric, and that's the wider one. So if you can have that facing up, if you cut that one, you'll know you've cut all of that white bit off, even if it's not white on the other side. It's slightly densely woven and it's got holes in it.
Yeah.
And that's just where it's been held on the loom while they've been weaving it, but it will react differently. So ultimately, when you've finished doing all your cutting, you need to have the selvage off your fabric.
Jane, I'm really glad you're mentioning this, and especially turning it over to get the wider selvage facing the top, because I don't know how many times I've cut some blocks and then flipped them over and realised there's a little white line down the edge of some
It's
of
okay.
them.
I mean, it does happen. We've all done it.
If it sits in your seam allowance, then you can
You can get away with
do
it.
this?
You can get away
But
with it.
it is annoying, and sometimes it does mean fabric wastage, and we don't like that.
Yes, yeah. So again, I'm doing this the same way as I did when I was straightening my fabric. I just made sure that one of my cut edges of my strip is lined up with that horizontal line, and that the selvage is just over the vertical line on my mat. Again, it doesn't matter which one I use. I could just move that right up there, have all that floating out of the way, line those up, and just make sure that bit there is straight. As long as I've got part of it on the straight there, I'll know that it's square. You know, we haven't all got the luxury of having the space to have a yard mat on our table.
No.
So I've cut that edge, cut those selvages off. So I'm going to flip this over now to that left-hand side.
And if you were
And I'm-
left-handed, would you reverse all of what you're doing today?
Yes, if you were left-handed, you'd trim it on your left-hand side, and then you would flip it to the right-hand side. I always cut my fabric with the fabric that I need under my ruler.
Yes.
It's just the way I was taught to do it. I know some people will cut it along, and you can do that, particularly if you're using your mat as your measurement. So I want the same size, I want squares, so I'm going to cut these up into the same size as my width of strip. And you just work your way along. No, I didn't do what I just told you, did I?
No, you didn't.
And that's what happens.
Do as I say, not as I do, Jane.
Yeah. So I've got the top of my strip lined up with my horizontal line on my ruler, and then I've got the black dots where I need them to be on the vertical there. So I know that's nice and square on my fabric.
These rulers do make life so much easier for
They
you,
do.
don't they? They've got so many brilliant markings. But yeah, there you see.
You can just
little
pull
nudge.
pull it apart. If you're using your stripology, of course, you'll just line your stripology up with the edge of the selvage, and you'll just be able to cut that straight away, all into 4.5 or whatever size squares that you need, all in one go. Saves you time, particularly if you're cutting a lot of strips or a lot of squares. I've got those squares. Now, because I've cut from the edge to the fold, if I open up this piece here, I can still get one more
Lovely.
from it. That is why I didn't fold it into 4.
Yeah.
Because if I folded it into 4, I wouldn't have had
No.
that piece. I'd have had two little pieces like that.
Fussy cut that last box, don't you?
Yeah. So there we go. That's
Beautiful.
for this quilt. You'll need to do that twice for
Okay.
that size square.
Yeah.
Don't worry about cutting these up just yet. They can stay in the full width of strip, and we'll explain why in a moment.
Okay.
So I'm going to have the orange against the square.
So should we look at the quilt behind us, Jane, and
Yeah.
you can explain what you mean by that? Because sometimes it's difficult, isn't it, for people to
Yes.
visualise where the fabrics are all going. I've shimmied myself off, so I'm sort of almost off screen, look.
Oh, yeah.
Giving you lots of
Giving
space.
me all the space.
Well, you need it today.
This is the block here. It's got
Yeah,
maple
because you
hairs on
can't
it.
always see
No,
where the block is.
this
so
is the
there.
block here. So
Right.
it's that big square, 2 small squares and 2 strips.
Sure.
So this is going to be my feature fabric, which is the cafe, then my coloured plain, and then what I consider the background.
Okay.
But sometimes the background can dominate more than the feature fabric. So it's quite interesting how the colours play, and I'm interested to see how it works with this one. So the colour I'm going to have next to my feature fabric.
Yep, so that's your orange.
Yeah.
So the mint is where the orange will go.
Yes.
Okay, lovely.
So once again, I've lined my fabric up, put my salvages together, lined my fabric up, and I'm just going to cut that to get the straight edge. Take that away. These pieces, if you're a gardener, these pieces come in handy for tying things to canes,
Oh, fabulous.
or you can just
And pretty.
stick them, stick them in your like offcuts bag, and then you can use them for stuffing.
I was going to say, I've always used mine for stuffing, so things like pin cushions and what have you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we are going to cut our strips at the same width as our square for this next round. Exactly the same principle. And once you get over that initial nervousness, and I put the fear of God in you because I've told you that your rotary cutter is sharp and you must
You're
take
going to
care.
cut yourself.
It does make cutting your fabric so much quicker and quite safe actually. It's a quick and safe way of cutting your fabric. This is the fabric that I would use for my binding. I might not, once I've made the quilt top, I might think I might have to order some more black.
That's all right.
Because I might like the black, or I might have to order some more of my designer, depending on. You can have a look at your quilt top once you've made it and decide which colour you want to have as your binding.
Jane, I think sometimes, until your quilt top's made, making that binding decision can be challenging.
It can. Now, one of these strips we're going to need to cut up into rectangles, but the other strip we're leaving the same for now, and this will all become clear as we do the pattern. Just lining that up along there just to cut that selvage off. All the cutting instructions are in the pattern. So you'll cut the whole strip into the pieces you need. Quantities and everything, amounts, measurements, everything are in the pattern. You might be shouting at me and saying, "You're not closing a rotary cutter." Because I'm not putting it down, I've cut it in my hand as I move the ruler.
Yeah.
I'm taking care and
That makes
holding
sense,
it.
Jane.
So we've got those pieces there, and we're just going to put those to one side. We've still got this piece like that. And then our third fabric, it needs to be a slightly wider strip, but the principle's the same. Just make sure we've got the straight edges together. I'd already started trimming this, and then I thought, no, I'm going to show them the cutting from beginning to end, just so that everybody can see how that goes. Now, you may have to, depending on your ruler, you may have to use your mat to cut the strips for this piece. in which case you'll line up your ruler with the measurements, making sure that straight edge is level with your vertical line and that your fold of your fabric is level with the horizontal. But my ruler is exactly the right width, so I don't have to worry about that. And again, you'll need 2 strips. Pop that out of the way. Move that one across there, and then we're going to turn this one round. We're going to cut those selvages off. Just lining that cut edge up with one of the horizontal lines on our mat. Just making sure that the selvage is right over the edge. Sometimes your selvage is a bit wobbly again. This is just because it's a different density of weave to the rest of the fabric. So don't worry too much about it. Now what you can do is you can fold your fabric again. And what I would have done is I would have lined that fold up so it's just over the line underneath my selvages, and I'm just going to trim that so you can imagine that I've cut that along as well as the selvage, and then turn that around, line that up with the edge of the fabric. Just going to trim those little stray threads there, and we can cut those to the width of rectangle that we need. And again, this just saves you time with your cutting. You've got a nice new blade on, so it's going to cut through these layers of fabric quite easily.
A new blade does make all the difference, doesn't it?
It does. Let me just put those into the scraps. So you've got all the strips that you need there. So now we've done all the cutting that we need to do for this pattern. Sometimes when I'm making a quilt, if it requires a lot of cutting, I will just mark the pieces so I know what the sizes are, particularly if they're very similar. So like on these ones, I'd have put what the square was,
yes,
and maybe even the fabric, because sometimes patterns have got like more than 3 fabrics. They've got like 10 or something, and it's always worth just having a little label, having them in stacks on your work table, particularly if your work table is your dining table and you're going to have to move everything at one point just so that everybody can eat.
I sometimes have the little placky bags as well, Jane, so that I can have fabric A and
yes, that helps keeping them together.
To keep the separate fabrics, and then
quilters clips, clipping them together.
With the sizes on them, so
it's always just nice to have that little degree of organisation. It just helps you further on down when you're making your quilt. So these 2 strips now, I am going to sew my smallest strip of my designer fabric to that. Okay, so we're going to put those right sides together and we're going to sew it. Now you might feel, if this is your first quilt, you might feel more comfortable by pinning it all the way along.
That's fine.
And that's okay, that's not a problem, you do that. I'm quite happy just to hold it together to start with, and then as I sew it, I'll keep just pulling it across, making sure they're lined up.
Now, unfortunately, our close-up camera is not behaving today. It is a black screen, which is not what we wanted at all. Jane, when it comes to sewing on your machine, how do you make sure that you're sewing with the right seam allowance?
We're very lucky on this one because it's a 1/4 inch foot. You can get a 1/4 inch foot, you can get machines that are digital and you can move your needle across. If you don't have either of those features on your machine, I had my very first machine, it just sewed straight and did a zigzag. It was a very basic machine, but it did what I needed it to do, and that was all. So I got my ruler, and you've got your 1/4 inch mark on your ruler here.
Right.
You can place that under your foot, bring your foot down, and using the side crank of your machine very gently,
I'm hoping everyone can see enough.
the needle down so that it sits on that 1/4 inch mark. And you can use electrical tape, or you could even use a marker pen if you were not too precious about your machine.
For me, with the washi tape.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Natasha makes washi tapes, I think, for this.
You can then place the edge of the tape against your edge of your ruler there.
Great.
And that gives you a line to line your fabrics up with.
Perfect. And actually, even if you have got other ways of knowing, so sometimes you've got your markings marked out on your base plate, haven't you, with quarter inch or whatever.
There.
For a lot of people, if you're sewing and you're going to get tired or whatever else, putting that piece of washi tape on there is just so, it's such a great visual, isn't it, to work against.
Absolutely.
So that might just be something you want to do anyway.
Now, in patchwork, we tend not to do any reverse stitching.
Nope.
We just sew straight. You're going to cut through your stitching anyway.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just
That's
adjusting
it's
the
all right. Do
foot.
you want me to sort that out for you, Jane?
Decided to tip
So
the
we've
mat
got a
over.
rubbery mat that the foot sits on, the sewing machine
There we
pedal
go.
sits on, to make sure it doesn't slip. And it just decided to move, didn't it?
Yeah. So,
But
again, normally I would have my machine square to me.
yes.
I say this to my ladies, I don't very often teach gentlemen, but it's the same thing really. I have it so that the needle is in between my bosom. Visually, centre of my chest. Just sort of like in your cleavage, so that you are standing square to your needle, so that you are always going to get a consistent seam.
Yeah. And we stand for these shows, but you
will
can
be
seated,
sitting.
of course.
If you're sitting, make sure your chair is square to your machine and that you are sitting straight, that you're not hunched over like this,
Yeah.
because again that's going to put pressure over your shoulders and over your middle of your back, and if you're staying for a long time you'll get off your chair and you'll be like, ugh. And if you're doing it for the first time, and particularly when you're doing your quilting, you do tend to tense up here.
Yeah.
So ever so often just sit yourself back and roll your shoulders back.
Yeah.
Because if you're
Arms
sitting there
up,
for a long
arms
time,
back. Yeah.
you're going to get pain across the back of your neck.
We all do it. We all adopt terrible posture.
Yes.
But like you say, Jane, there's no need to do a reverse stitch at the beginning of this seam, because
No.
you are going to cut through this at some point. And I think that took a little bit of getting used to for me as well.
Yes.
Because I was so used to reversing and then
And
sewing.
if you are used to reversing, it's not the end of the world if you do a reverse
No,
stitch.
it's
I'm
not.
just saying you don't need to.
Not necessarily. We did say, fortunately, as much as our close-up cam isn't working today to show you Jane's stitching, it's all straight line stitching today, Jane.
Yeah.
So we're all good. She's just sewing these two pieces of fabric together along the long edge. I think we can all imagine that one nice and neatly.
And I'm just stopping and just adjusting it to make sure that it is edge to edge as I come down towards the end.
Jane, I'm really looking forward to seeing how these fabrics look together.
I think it's going to be quite good fun.
Yeah. And this is a Bonnie block, you
Yes.
say.
It's quite an old one block. It goes quite, it's one of the traditional blocks.
Yeah.
Now when it comes to pressing your fabric,
I'm going to move out of the way for this one.
okay, we press, we don't iron. It's very much a case of pressing the fabric, so holding your iron down on your fabric, and that sort of sets your seam. It just flattens the stitching into the fabric. And then I'm going to push the fabric away so that the seam sits under the designer fabric. And then I'm just going to use my iron and I'm pressing that seam. So I'm using my fingers to push it away, and then I'm just holding the iron on it. I'm not ironing like this. It's just that even though you've treated your fabric with your best press or whatever, it's not going to, it might stretch it. So we just press the seam down. We use a dry iron. We don't need to use steam at this point. Always use a dry iron. We generally have the rule of you press the seam to the dark side, but sometimes you'll press it to the lighter side, and I'll explain things like that as we go on with this pattern. But the general rule is, and that's just because when we press seams to one side, we don't tend to press them open. Some people do, and again, there's rules here that are my rules. They're not the rule.
They're my rules.
This is the way I've been taught. You can press your seam open It's not the end of the world. Nobody's going to check because they won't be able to see your seams anyway. But by pressing the seam open, you're actually protecting this line of stitching here with the fabric. Because when you do patchwork and quilting, when this is in a quilt top, you're going to be sewing over this. Now, if you've got your seams pressed open, it will expose the stitches.
Yeah.
And so when you sew over it, your needle might go through that thread
Sure.
and break that thread, which over time, not straight away, but over time with washing and wear, it will create a hole. So this
Jane,
is why
that's why you press to one side.
to one side.
Yeah.
It's protecting your line of stitching, basically.
That makes loads of sense. I've never really thought about why we do this. And
So
now I know.
that's pressed like so. And we're going to do the same with the other strip. So I'm just going to line that up, right sides together. And I'm going to sew down here. This is going to be quite a long show today, but I think it's nice just sometimes to go back and revisit. And you know, we get new viewers all the time,
do.
don't we? And some of
We
them may
do.
not be used to quilting.
And it's very easy for us to make the assumption that everyone has a certain level of knowledge or experience, and that's not the case. We're getting new viewers all the time. It's lovely to have you with us. We might even have brand new viewers today, Jane. We don't know. It happens
never
all
know.
the time. And if you are new to us, then perhaps you're wondering what all of this is about. We bring you shows every Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday. We should have a show on Friday this week as well, all things being well with the tech. I know SJ's busily trying to get everything to work today. And yes, we are here in the UK, so 10 a.m. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We will offer you all sorts of sewing tutorials, and there's 3.5 years worth of shows to watch back on YouTube, on Facebook, if you can rummage around that way and find them. But you will also find the shows and the products that we're using and our patterns on our website, natashamakes.com. Today's pattern's the Bonnie Blue quilt, but we have, I dread to think, Jane, how many patterns we have. Many.
I think we're going into hundreds, aren't we now?
Easily. And we have patterns in printed format, so if you're in the UK, if you're in a country that we ship to, you can buy those. But our digital download patterns are incredibly popular because you can download those wherever you are in the world. And should we ever update or add more information or new images or anything like that, then when we do so, you will automatically get a new version emailed through if you've bought the digital version.
Right,
Jane,
just going to
I shall go back in overhead and let everyone have another peep.
just going to press
There we go.
this now. So I've just used my fingers and I've just pushed that seam away,
Yeah.
and then I'll just press that with the iron. We're using one of the Taylor's iron mats, House of Alistair
Yeah.
pressing mats. These are wool mats. They look really thin,
I do.
but they are fabulous. They absorb all the heat, so there's hardly any heat transferred to your surface underneath.
It's a really
They-
good point, Jane. We're not using a beautiful, French polished table here,
No.
but this is a worktop, and it just has the pressing mat on it, and yet
It's hardly
very
any
little heat.
Yeah, I mean, some heat does come through, but
course.
not the same intensity as your. These are great. They're portable. They'll go anywhere,
We wouldn't recommend you do it on your French
but
polished
not
table.
on your French
No, no.
polished table, because some moisture will come through if
Of
nothing
course.
else,
Yes.
which will affect it.
Yes, of course.
So we've now got our squares, our rectangles, and we've got these two strips, and we're going to cut these strips now into the same width as our rectangles. So we do the same thing. We line up the cut edge with our horizontal line, just so this out. Now you can see I've got extra bit here
Yeah.
because this fabric's slightly wider than the next.
Yep.
You'll get fabrics from the same collection and there will be different widths, and it's amazing. Never ceases to amaze me. I'm just making sure that the selvage there is just over. Line that up. So it's cut. I'm going to just trim that off to make it square. Now I also will, just to check that I am straight, lining that edge up there with that vertical line there and there. I'm also just going to make sure that my seam line is on the horizontal there. Just because with the pressing and the sewing, sometimes it can make your cut edge a bit wobbly, but I know that my seam line is the straight line. So I'll just line the horizontal line on my ruler there with that line on the seam, making sure that I've got it straight here and here on the vertical, and then I'll just straighten that edge. So that's straight edge then for me to then cut my strips from, and I'll work my way down and I will cut my strips to the width I need. And again, I'm just lining up my fabric, my ruler, with that straight edge. You can pull your fabric underneath your ruler just to get it to move. So I'm quite happy that that's where I need it to be. Now you'll cut strips from your strip, you'll cut your pieces, and as you work your way down, you may find you get so far and your strip looks a bit wonky. It happens. I don't know why it happens. I think the fabric fibres probably move a bit as you're cutting. So you may put your ruler on. I'm going to put this so it's not on the line. You may put the edge of your ruler on. You might line it up with your seam line there, and it fits down here, but then you get up there and it's like nearly 1/8 of an inch over. And you're like, well, how come that's happened? Because I've been cutting this really straight. I don't know why it happens, it does. But what you can do is you could just turn it round, line it up again, and just trim that little bit that's gone a bit off, and straighten your edge.
Don't go trimming a great lump off.
No,
just a little tiny slither.
It's a slither. And you can trim that off and you've got your straight edge again. I think sometimes the fabrics, if they're different fabrics, they work against each other. It might be a slightly different weave.
Might be the gremlins.
It might be the pressure that you put on your ruler as you're cutting. It might be the way that your mat works, all sorts of things. But it does happen. So don't think it's, an error you've made. It just happens. It happens quite often.
Sometimes there's just a bit of wizardry at play, isn't there? And we can't explain it. We just have to know what to do with it.
It's just one of those things. Now, sometimes, even though you've pressed and starched and steamed your fabric, you will find that that middle crease doesn't want to go. Just doesn't want to move. So, I'm going to come up to this piece here. I personally wouldn't cut my piece there.
Okay.
I just trim my edge just past that fold. The minimum I need to do, almost on the fold. It's just 1/2 inch. And stick that in my scraps.
Strike it up to experience.
And just carry on cutting. Just because if it's not come out by now and we've been pressing and piecing, I really don't think it's ever going to come out. It might do when you wash it, but I don't want to take that chance. So I'm just going to ignore it and take it out of my project completely. What's the saying they say? Somebody will be able to tell me. It's like spoiling the project for a pen at a tar or something. Sinking the boat for a pen, something like that. Anyway, I'm going to stop there. You will work all your way down on that strip. So those go with that one there.
Martin says, always remember to take regular breaks.
Yes.
And biscuits.
Yeah.
Of course.
A cup of tea, biscuit, did you the world of good.
Joking aside, there's not much that a cup of tea and a biscuit can't solve. There have been times, not since I've had my Juki actually, but with my previous machine, where something's going wrong, Jane, my machine's perhaps misbehaving or something's happening, or I've tried to put two pieces together and I've done it wrong twice and unpicked it. At which point you just know I've probably walked my fabrics all over the place. I probably need to recut those blocks. But there are times where I've just gone, right, I've not got the headspace for this right now. No. Switch it off, go away, have a cup of tea, come back with fresh eyes. Or actually, especially when we do what we do and we're crazy and we're quilting until
early
burning
hours of the
midnight-
morning.
yeah, burning
we
the
all do
midnight
it
oil.
because we get so engrossed in what we're doing. It's like,
Yeah.
I just do a bit more, just do a bit more.
Sometimes it's just time to go, I'm going to switch this off now.
Yeah, you'll
Go
come
to
to a
bed.
point and you're like, I've unpicked this 3 times.
Yeah.
It's still not going together. I'm leaving it.
And it's
I've had enough.
that's the exception rather than the rule. The majority
Yeah,
of the time, this
sometimes.
is the most beautiful, mindful, lovely hobby.
Yes.
However, every now and again,
Your
it happens.
biorhythms just aren't right and you just need to walk away. Let it go.
Just know, you need to come and hold your hands up and say, another day,
Yeah.
another day, dear, or cup of tea and biscuits.
Yeah, always works. Now, I've put this strip together because I'm going to multi-cut it. Now, you might have thought I might put it together wrong sides together so I can see the seam line. What will happen there is I've got 2 bulky bits. So if I put that
Okay.
this way together
Yep.
and start cutting it, I've got bulky bits there that are going to rub against
Yeah.
each other, and that will move the fabric more than if I've got them with the flat seam together.
I hate it when bulky bits rub together, Jane.
It's annoying.
It is.
It is annoying.
Yeah, just winds me up.
So again, I'm going to line that up horizontally there. Just make salvage over that edge and line that up. And I've got my stitch line. Now thread. That was the other thing we should talk about when you're doing your project.
Yes.
Ideally, I probably wouldn't use a light colour thread normally. When I've got dark colours, I'd
No.
use a grey colour. I tend to use a neutral tone with all my piecing. I don't worry about matching my thread up to my fabric when I'm piecing. I might when I'm quilting, but when I'm piecing, I'll use a neutral colour. So I've got like my favourite one that I use, which is sort of like a creamy grey colour.
Yeah.
And then I've got a darker grey for like the dark fabrics. And that's 2 threads that I use for my piecing.
I'm the same. I have a myriad of colours, but like you say, they are for my top stitching, for my quilting,
Yes.
things that will be seen.
When I'm piecing, I will try and use a 50 weight or a 60 weight thread. I prefer a 60 weight. 60 weight, the higher the number, the lighter, thinner the thread. By using a thinner thread, it sits deeper into the fabric and so gives you less bulk. Now we're talking, you'd hardly notice it really, but 50 or less. 80, which we tend to use for like hand piecing or applique, might be a bit too light and might break too easily. But 50, 60 is a good weight of thread for piecing. And then I'll use a 50 to 40 for my top stitching, just because I like it to show. You can use thicker thread as well. So when it comes to threads, that's always what I go towards.
It's all really interesting, Jane, because, you know, we just muddle through, I think, sometimes.
Yeah.
But a decent quality of thread as well. Again, issues I've had in the past with previous machine, at one point, it was just I was using a cheap thread.
Yeah. I've heard people say, oh, my machine doesn't like that make of thread. It's very rare that your machine dictates which thread to use.
Agreed. However, I did, you know, find if you're buying really cheap thread,
Yes.
it will snap.
It will.
It will snap. It won't behave.
If you can get a silk coated thread, and I do use cotton thread, I don't use polyester thread. I do like to use cotton thread. That's not to say if I find the right shade and it's polyester that I won't use it. It's just that I prefer to use a cotton thread because it wears at the same rate as my fabric. It's not going to run out. I'm not going to wear it out in my lifetime, but it will over time. So if you are making a quilt that you want as an heirloom and you're using cotton fabrics, I wouldn't use polyester thread. Just missed that one there. And so we can work our way down the strip by folding that over. Again, it just saves us time, makes cutting quicker. Because, you know, the quicker you can be, the quicker you can finish your project. And you can see there, because I'm using my ruler, it doesn't matter that my strip's at an angle to my mat. I've done all my squaring up with my mat and my ruler to start with, and I can just have my fabric anyway, which is comfortable for me. So we've got all of these strips now, and we can get on with the block.
I'm excited to see this come together.
It's going to be interesting, isn't it? But you can see here I've got, it's the same fabric, but those two strips there, they look like they're different fabrics.
They really
which
do.
is wonderful.
Isn't it?
I love this about Cave's fabric.
Me too.
So we'll start with our centre square.
We're going to get shot though, Jane, because it is Cave Facet Collective, but it's a Philip Jacobs design.
Yes, sorry Philip, sorry.
Right, Philip is the
Can I
most
just borrow yours?
phenomenal artist. Amazing. And then Cave does the most brilliant job of the colour work.
He does.
So yeah, it's like a marriage made in heaven, I think, where fabrics are concerned, when Philip and Cave work together on something. Incredible.
So I'm going to take one of my squares and I'm going to take one of my rectangles. I'm going to place it on the one side.
Yep.
Put those right sides together and sew those down. Now, you can do what we call chain piecing here.
Oh, Jane,
And
this
again,
was a revelation for me. The things you've
chain
taught me.
piecing, just, you know, it's another thing like folding your fabric up into 4 to cut 8 pieces in one go. It just reduces your thread wastage and saves you time.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and also I think it really made my 1/4 inch more consistent as well.
yes,
Because as you're feeding your first pair through, and then you go in to feed your next pair through, you visually just, it's like
Yeah.
sewing a straight line, isn't it?
you're sitting comfortably to your machine, you've got yourself nice and square to your machine, and you can just go. You can go for it, and it really does save you time.
Plus, the fewer times I'm cutting the thread, the better. Like you say, from thread wastage, but also, you know, just if it's constant cutting of thread,
Yeah.
I don't know, the machine's like, come on, I want to crack on. And I
So-
want to crack on as well.
You can see I've just sewn down there,
Yep.
done my 1/4
Hopefully
inch seam,
you can see.
and then I just place the next one underneath, and I carry on sewing, and then cut my thread. And again, if you're a little bit unsure about everything, you can pin your fabrics together.
Yeah. And
There's
for anyone
no
who's
rule.
joined us late, we're not in close-up cam for this because it's not working. There was a power cut this morning and it seems to have made it quite cross.
Yeah.
So sorry about that. But Jane is just sewing straight lines today, so this is just the 2 pieces together. Smaller piece on the top, Jane, is there
Yeah,
a particular reason
I
for
tend
that?
to, only because visually it's easier to see,
Sure.
and I know that it's lined up and it's square.
Yep.
Um,
And then just 1/4 inch seam.
yeah,
Perfect.
and we're chain piecing, so we're not cutting in between each one.
Be like a nice string of flags.
I was
at the
going to say, we
end.
make a nice string
Yeah.
of bunting. If you do like to pin, I would pin them all first before you start to sew. Again, it just saves you time.
Yeah.
And with this machine, it's a semi-industrial, it will move. So, you know, you can really zoom through your piecing.
You can. The TL2200 QP. It's yeah, semi-industrial, like you say. Little lightweight, portable, but with all the power of an industrial.
Yeah.
So this machine just does a straight stitch, Jane, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And with your quilting, well, with your piecing, that's all you're going to need, isn't it?
Yeah.
For this project, for sure.
Absolutely.
No decorative
So-
stitches required at this point. Look at her string off flags. Look
We
at
just
that.
end up with a string like that. So what we'll do then is we'll just, with our rotary cutter or a pair of little snips, our EZ snips are ideal for this. Sorry, SJ.
I know, she's never going to live this down.
We can just, it's little phrases, isn't it? I mean, we've all done it with our children or
Yes,
you know,
gosh.
things that they say that now become your everyday language.
Yep. My brother, when he was little, couldn't say the word forgot. He'd
Yeah.
say got for.
Yeah,
And even now, in our family, it's, oh, I got for that.
yeah,
Like, not forgot, I got for.
yeah. Isaac used to say,
So cute.
I can't like it. So now we say,
Like
I can't like it. If you don't want something, we're like, I can't like it.
It's adorable.
It used to be like sort of with food, you'd be like, no, I can't like that.
Oh, little Emily comes out with some wonderful
Oh yes,
things.
do it all on my own.
Yeah, by my own. I do it by my own. Was
So-
her favourite one.
Again with the pressing, we're just pressing that to one side and we're pressing it towards the plain fabric,
Yeah.
just because sometimes you'll find with your fabrics that it tells you where it wants to go.
Yeah.
But it's usually easier to press it away from yourself.
Saying that's wanting to tell you which way to press is more true, isn't it, when you've got a more complex block with more seams?
Yeah.
And unless we're showing you one of those, it's difficult to communicate that, but you do know.
Yes.
You go to press.
Well, sometimes you've got multiple seams coming together and your
Correct.
fabric's like, I'm not going that way.
Yeah, exactly that. And so, you know, we mention it. It doesn't necessarily mean something to you at this stage, but if you do then go forward and do some more intricate blocks, oh, it'll tell you.
So I've got my seam going that way on
Yep.
there. Now, I did press that to the designer side when really I should have pressed it to the plain.
Okay.
Purely because when I come to now, take these pieces, I'm going to line that up there. Now, if I've got that seam going that way
Yeah.
and that one underneath going the other way, I can just nestle those seams together. And it's very difficult to show you on this, even close up, but you almost feel it click.
You do.
You'll feel that seam go on. Now what you can do is you can just run a pin along that seam there to hold it. Just there. I haven't brought it right up to the top, and I would take it out if I was sewing it towards the edge, but it just holds that down while
Jane,
you're taking it to the machine, and
when
you can see that lines up.
Yeah, you taught me this when I was first quilting, and there's a natural assumption, I think, that when you're taking these two pieces together, that placing them in such a way, you know, that it's going to automatically be that the seams meet.
Yeah.
And that's not the case, is it? You know, just because you're saying, oh, well, that piece starts there and ends there, that's going to meet in the middle.
Yeah, sometimes
it
it
can be
doesn't.
a fraction off, and
Yeah.
that's the important point, isn't it? Not here and here.
Yeah, you
'Cause
want to
you'll lose
concentrate
those.
on this meeting point here,
Yeah.
because that's what you're going to see. If it's an eighth or a couple of threads out either end, it's going to disappear into your seam allowance. If it's more than 1/4 of an inch, you've cut something wrong.
Yes.
Or your
yes.
seam allowance is way too big.
Sure.
But
If it's a whisker,
just a little bit either
end.
side, less than 1/4 of an inch, I wouldn't worry about it. It'll disappear into the seam.
But if you haven't met this point,
Yeah.
you're going to see it.
Yeah.
You're going to notice.
That's
And it
where your
doesn't
eye is going
matter.
to look.
It doesn't matter massively.
No. And also,
And on the odd one here and there, it's okay.
and if it's only like a thread or two,
Yes.
don't worry about it, because in the grand scheme of things, when it's on the bed or on the back of the sofa, you can't see it.
Nope. And no one's looking for it except you.
Yeah.
However,
3 metre rule, I call it the 3 foot 3 foot rule, not the 3 metre rule. Because if you're standing on the end of a bed looking at a quilt, or if you're standing in front of your sofa looking at a quilt, you're about 3 feet away from it.
You are.
So if you can't see it from 3 feet away, then don't worry about it. And again, we're going to run a 1/4 inch seam down here, running it across there. We'll take the pin out as we get to it, and we can chain piece all those pieces as well. You might just want to stop and just rearrange your fabric as you get towards the end. There's a lot of things that can be hidden in a seam allowance. It's amazing.
It's an awful lot.
So, you know, don't worry about it too much. And if it is your first quilt, it's all part of the learning process.
Definitely. Jane, we always say, don't we, that where quilting is concerned, precision is key.
Yes,
And to be as accurate and consistent as you can.
absolutely.
I took that to a different level and got a bit obsessive. And I had
Yeah.
to be knocked back a little bit with, hang on a minute, now you're just being daft. And that was simply because, as someone who'd worked as a nail professional and taught nails for years,
I was going to say, you're used to working in millimetre
yeah,
precision.
or fractions of a millimetre, that shows massively on a tiny canvas like a nail. With something like this, your fraction of a millimetre is not your issue, is it?
No.
So
You'll quite often hear a quilting teacher saying, oh yeah, that's like 2 threads out, you'll have to unpick that and do that again, in a jokey way.
yeah, because it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And also, some of the imperfections of a quilt are what give it its charm. It
Well,
has to be
yes,
said.
because it is handmade at the end of the day. We're not machines. We're not making a mass-produced project. We're making something with love,
Yeah.
and we're doing it because it's something we like to do. We like to have the fabrics, we like to see the colours.
Definitely.
And it's quite mindful at the end of the day.
One of the first quilts I made off my own back at home was all squares, so like charm pack size squares, and I'd embroidered some, I'd done all sorts of bits and bobs. Mix of fabrics, I wouldn't recommend that again.
No.
You start mixing your fabrics because some of them have got more stretch than others, and I learnt lots through making that. And I stood back at the end and looked at it and went, oh. And my bottom right hand block I'd sewn in with the wrong side facing out, so the reverse of the fabric facing out. It was a polka dot fabric, so it wasn't immediately noticeable.
No.
But then once I saw it, it stood out like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
But I'd made it, I quilted it, and the whole shebang by then before I spotted Jane. I was so obsessing over the other detail that I didn't notice. So I got a handmade with love label, and I hand stitched it onto that corner block, and I gifted it. It was for a little boy who was 2 years old. He adored it.
Yeah.
Had all these different textures, had his name on it and everything. And when I made another one, I had to make sure I did it the same.
Yeah.
That was my signature for that family after that. So the bottom right hand block was reverse side out with handmade with love sewn onto it as an applique, because I said it's just a mark of the fact it's imperfect. It's handmade, it's made with love, and it's imperfect. And I mean, it was an accidental thing, but it just became a part of what I did for that particular family.
And the Amish community, they'll deliberately put a mistake in their quilts because only God is perfect.
Exactly.
And it's a well-known little signature for those.
Yeah.
My biggest one was I made an alphabet quilt and I put the X and the W the wrong way round. And didn't see it until I'd quilted and bound it.
Jane.
I couldn't gift that. I was like, well, that's no good as a
Where
teaching
is it now?
quilt. Shoved in a bag in the corner of my sewing room.
No, it's in the shame corner. You've banished it to the naughty corner. Oh, Jane. Oh, bless you. You must have been furious.
I just like, how on earth did I do that?
There's a lot we can correct. And if you spot something before you've quilted it, then okay, you can, it's annoying, get into the unpicking of blocks, moving them around.
Yeah.
We've done that a few times. In fact, we've made samples for this here show and had them hanging behind us. And it's not until after the show we've gone, that block's upside down.
Yeah.
And we've had to laugh at it. But yeah, if it's just at the quilt top stage,
that's fine.
Then you can unpick it, pop it round the right way, layer
there
it up and bind it.
There are little ways of sort of unpicking partial seams and turning things around and then resewing them. It's not the end of the world. And sometimes, you just created a different design. Nobody but you knew what it was supposed to be like in the first place.
Nope. And that's the key thing, isn't it? When you're making something, yes, you may know it was supposed to be a certain way, but the person you're gifting it to probably has no idea what it was supposed to look like. And I think that's so important.
Yeah, because generally speaking, you're gifting it to somebody that probably isn't a sewer.
Nope.
And so they won't mind. So that's the first round, and then we're going to do the same with the next rectangle, and then that one on the top. So we'll just quickly I know this is going on forever. But, we're just over an hour and a half into the show, and I don't think I started sewing till about an hour ago maybe.
I won't tell you it's 1 minute to 12, Jane.
No.
It's fine. I mean, that's the beauty of us being here rather than on that there proper telly, is we run by our own clock.
Yeah.
And if you ever want to watch our shows back, maybe you've got somewhere you need to pop off and be, that's okay. You can catch us up later today. You can catch us up tomorrow. You can catch us up next week. You can catch us up next month. Our shows are all available for you to watch back, which is great.
What I'll do is I'll do 4 blocks, and then that's a quarter. My mouth will work. It is a quarter of the quilt. So you will see how it goes together.
Jane Gray says, Jane, that she always ends up in a right old pickle when she's chain stitching. Why is that then?
Does it twist itself around, Jane? Sometimes it gets itself twisted, doesn't it? I'm going to leave those as they are.
But it's not for everybody, and it's not compulsory.
No.
I love a bit of chain stitching, but it's not for everyone.
It isn't for everybody, and this is the beauty of patchwork. You can learn all the general rules, you know, keeping yourself safe and the cutting accurately. But after that, how you put a quilt together is up to you at the end of the day.
Oh, Jane, we've got people sharing their little isms. So we were saying earlier about Isaac and Emily, and Sylph says him indoors is Portuguese, so my isms confuse him. He goes out into public, bless him, and asks for strawberries instead of strawberries in a shop, or sketty instead of spaghetti.
Yeah.
Joe Standage says, my granddaughter can't say Chris, so we have an Uncle Crisp. I love Uncle Crisp, that's amazing.
Our next door neighbour's little girl, she was the youngest girl with 3 older brothers.
Yes.
And I wasn't very old at the time, and she used to call me Jane.
Aww.
Because she couldn't say Jane, because she got you know, she's just all the boys' names really.
Oh gosh, well my friend's husband is a handyman, and Mr. Thomas, I think some may have heard previously, he's earned the affectionate name of Frank Spencer.
Yes.
With my parents, because he's not a DIY pro. He's somewhat of a DIY disaster. So my friend's husband is Jeremy, and Jeremy fixes things always.
Yeah.
That's how it is. That's how it is in our lives. Well, when Gemma was little, my stepdaughter, she could not say Jeremy for love nor money. And it was Gemmery. He's still in my phone as Gemmery. We still call him Gemmery. We text him, all right, Gemmery.
It's wonderful.
He calls himself Gemmery when he's in our house.
Yeah.
We also had an Auntie Calarine, which was nice.
So I'm now going to place the black one on the top so that my squares are running in a diagonal.
Look at that. This
rather
looks so
vibrant.
pro. And it's just been straight lines.
Yep.
And straight strips and squares. And Jane, you know, we've said this is a beginner make, but doesn't that look impressive?
It's lovely.
So different in that colourway.
Yeah, this is the thing.
I can't wait to see it when it's up here.
You know, different fabrics will create different effects, and it's amazing. Again, it's one of those things that fascinates me. And one of the things I think I love most about patchwork and quilting is the fact that I've taught groups of ladies, we've done the same quilt, we've all done it in different fabrics, and we've had different effects.
Brilliant.
It's exactly the same pattern,
Yep.
but because of the fabrics and colours that have been used, it just creates a different effect each
vastly
time.
different. Would it be helpful, Jane, if I get some of these together for you?
That would be fabulous. Thank you.
Sit here doing nothing, eh? I'm loving the fabric, like you say, each fabric that's been cut, it looks different to the previous one.
This is the beauty of having a Cave Collective fabric. It just, you know, you can have the brassicas, the curly kales.
I'm going to go into overhead actually and have a look at
all of these. And this, again, this Valentine Sailor just gives it.
Valentine Sailor, you're at it now. Sailor Valentine.
Well,
I know, Natasha's calling it Sailor Jerry. You're calling it the Valentine Sailor. Although I'd love to see him. He sounds charming.
So I'm just like,
now I'm just going to show everyone that the bits of fabric look.
Yeah, get a different effect each time.
Let's see.
Different square.
Yeah. Look. And even something like these two, which are clearly the same part that Philip's drawn, they've just been done different
colourway.
Colour, which makes all the difference. But yeah, it's good, isn't it? I love those. I shall tell Natasha it's now the Valentine Sailor and not Sailor Jerry. Pair of you.
Terrible.
It's all right. Again, there's always that thing in a household, isn't there, of things getting called the wrong thing and then it sticks.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have that too. I think a lot of them are quite rude though, I don't think. And sayings being wrong as well. My mum is an absolute classic for saying things, you know, commonly known phrases wrong.
Yeah.
But then Gemma did it the other day. I heard it on the grapevine, came up in conversation. And my stepdaughter said, I thought it was grapevine. Yeah. I said, no, grapevine. She's like, no, it's grapevine. We're like, no, darling, it's great. Well, my daughter was absolutely laughing her head off, sat next door at our neighbour's house through this whole conversation on our WhatsApp, our family WhatsApp.
Yeah.
She's 25 and she sat there and she went, I thought it was grapevine as well. And I actually had to Google, pull up the song, pull up, various sources and send them through on WhatsApp for either my stepdaughter, who is nearly 20, or my 25-year-old neighbour to believe me.
Brilliant.
I'm so convinced. Isn't it funny?
So you've got all these blocks now.
Look at these.
You will have...
Oh, Jane, they look fabulous.
Ultimately, you'll have 16 of these blocks.
Yeah.
So we're going to make them into the square now, and then we put the squares together. So I'm going to make what is effectively the quarter of the quilt. So 2 of the blocks side by side, and then you rotate one. Do it the right way, Jane. Just by 1/4 clockwise.
Yeah.
So you've got your big square against your little square.
Okay.
Okay. You're going to sew those into pairs, and you're going to do that with all of them, so they're sewn exactly the same way into pairs.
So laying them out is so important at this stage, isn't it, Jane?
Yeah, just...
Because otherwise that's when you end up with an upside down block.
You can, and it
or
does happen.
This way, that way block.
The beauty of this is you don't have any seams to match at this
Great.
point.
Perfect.
So again, if your seam's a bit wobbly or it doesn't quite match up,
I absolutely love this fabric combo.
it's fabulous. It's very vibrant, isn't
it?
Completely opposite to the one that we made on the wall, which is the
remember
beauty of it.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember us doing a really subtle pattern before, and Vicky, my Vicky, got some midnight plain and some really vibrant lime and blue and teal colour fabrics.
Yeah.
And did her own version, didn't she?
Yeah, and it was fabulous.
And we looked at it and you just were like, wow. It looks incredible.
I love it, yeah.
This is where Jane was going, oh, it's better than mine. And she was a beginner. She just got this great idea.
She's got a lovely eye for colour,
of
hasn't
putting
she?
these fabrics together. And, you know, if you've got an idea of fabrics you want to put together and you're thinking, I'm not sure, just give us a shout and we'll have a look at them. We will.
Yeah,
we'll give our
we can do
opinion.
that.
Sometimes you can't tell fully till that block is made, but we will totally give you our opinion. We'd love to hear from you. info@natashamakes.com, that's our email.
So we've now got 2 sets of pairs, and you will have 8 sets of pairs when you've done your whole block. I'm pressing the seam that way on all of the blocks. So mine's gone that way. You may find you want to press it the other way. It's fine, just keep it consistent.
Yeah.
And you're going to take one of the pairs and you're going to turn that around and you're going to place that against there.
Fabulous.
Look at that, it's gorgeous.
Look at that.
And by doing so, you've then got that seam going that way and that seam going that way.
Even better.
So when you place them together, you just match up that seam there.
Clicky seams.
And you will press it. I'm just finger pressing it for now. And again, that's the only seam that you've got to line up. All the other, there's no other seams on it.
Jane, sometimes when you put your blocks together like that and you match up your points, sometimes it seems like one piece is baggier or bigger than the other.
Yeah. In that instance,
Yeah.
I will put the baggier one on the bottom.
Okay.
Just because the feed dogs tend to pull it up a bit.
Yeah.
I don't know
And
what, again, that's a
somehow
bit of
it's-
magic.
It's not going to, you know, it's not going to hide a great wodge of
No,
extra
if
fabric.
it's hugely
But if there's
different.
a tiny discrepancy in how baggy or big one block is versus the other, flipping it over and having the bigger one at the bottom does seem to
Yeah,
fix it.
it's a little bit of patchwork magic.
It is, and it's one of the favourite tricks you've taught me.
It's just, I don't know how it works, but it does.
Every time she teaches me something, I feel like the Sorcerer's Apprentice. The Stitchy Witch and the Sorcerer's Apprentice.
This is it. So this is your block.
Wow.
So that's your block. That's a quarter of your quilt.
Brilliant.
So if we go on to overhead front view, I'll pop that into the...
Yes.
And that goes there.
Oh, wow.
So at the end of the day,
Looks
you'll make 4 of those, and you can see that block there, and then that block. It's the same block. It
Yeah.
just goes like that. So
Yeah.
you're putting the small square against the large square
Sure.
each time, just like you have done when you joined the seams in the middle. I'm just going to pin that, and then everybody will be able to see it without my...
But Jane, the beauty of what you've taught today as well, though, is that, you know, when you laid those blocks out earlier and you've got them all in the same orientation,
Yeah.
if someone likes them all in the same orientation, there's
You
nothing
can
stopping you
create
putting those together like that
a
or
different
doing something
pattern.
different.
Yeah. This is the beauty of patchwork. If you wanted to have all of those facing the same way, you're going to get a diagonal line of your fabrics going through.
Or if you wanted
So
to
as
make
mine's
some really,
formed like a crisscross, you'll just get diagonal lines.
Exactly. Or if you wanted to make a really zazzy cushion cover or a nice mat to go on your table, and you decided to put, well, you could do it like this, or you could put all 4 big blocks in the middle.
Yeah.
That would look fantastic, wouldn't it? And then you'd have like a black border around the outside with those cornerstones, those smaller pieces of the feature fabric in the 4 corners.
What I'd say to you is, make your block, lay them out, turn them around, have a play with them before you actually sew them together.
Do that.
But whatever you do, sew them into pairs and then into rows, and then you rows together.
Okay.
It just stops it moving.
Fabulous.
It makes less movement of your rows, and it's easier to sew it.
Great stuff.
So there you go.
Jane, that's been fascinating. I've loved it. I feel like some of the bolt ends that we had today would be beautiful on the back of this.
Yes.
You know, some of these fabrics are just absolutely perfect for it. And I know there have been a fair bit of movement of those bolt ends, but they are now loaded and live. They are on today's collection. If you're looking to purchase from us and you've not purchased before, then that would be marvellous.
Yes.
We'd love that. We give you these shows for free every single week, 3 days a week. But we stay here because of the purchases you make. So our instructions are online, our kits are online, fabrics, etc. You can find us at natashamakes.com. Click on the Watch Live page if you're watching today on our live show.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you can go to Workshop Wednesday and have a look if it's the same week. But all of the products are on there that are from this week's shows, previous shows, etc.
If you buy the pattern,
Yes.
it tells you the date of the show on the pattern.
It
So you
does.
can always, when you, because we've done it, we all do it, don't we? We buy the pattern, the fabric, and we put it to one side for later.
Yes.
And then we come to it and we're like,
Don't worry.
when did she demonstrate that?
Don't
It's on
worry.
the pattern.
You'll be able to pull out your quilt kit and your pattern and go, there we go, that's the date, and search it, find it online and watch this show back and make along with Jane.
Yeah.
She might be anywhere. She could be asleep, on holiday or anything, but you'll have her right in your lounge or sewing room.
You
Great.
can stop me,
Yeah.
whiz me forward, and go back again.
Zip past where we talk nonsense, zip past where the screen was black, all of that, and get the bits you need.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Jane, thank you.
You're very
It's
welcome.
been great. For those who missed Monday and Tuesday, you really did miss a treat. Monday, Natasha shows you all the new K Facet Collective fabrics. Tuesday, she made the fabulous, curvy, fabulous bag. So make sure you catch up on those. A lot of the Cave now, can't believe I'm saying this, we've only had it a few days, is critically low quantity or sold out. So if it is that you want those fabrics, do have a look. We also have some 1/2 metre heavens that she put together of those yesterday, and some trio bundles that she put together Monday. Where I've been able to, I've added additional stock. Again, they are very, very limited and they won't last long. They'll be gone soon. Jane, I think we need to crack on. We've got all sorts to do.
Yeah.
It's been a mammoth show, but it's been
has.
great. If you do want your creative grids, get those orders in today. I will get that across to Creative Grids and they should be with us soon. The Strapology's in stock with us already, but the CGR 24 and the CGR 1224, the Big Easy, they're just going to take a few days. So by the time they get to us and we package them, you probably won't notice any difference.
Yeah.
It'll all be fine. It's been lovely to have you with us. I can see there's a lot of love for Jane. Cynthia says striking colourway. She also doesn't pre-wash her fabric, and
No.
she gifts the quilt with the colour catchers and says when you do wash it, use those.
Yeah. Good
It's a
idea.
great idea. Brilliant
Yeah.
idea. Yeah, lots of people saying thank you, Jane, and that it's been a lovely show. They love it. They love the quilt. They love you. Oh, so there
Thank
we go.
you.
And that it would make a lovely table runner as well.
It would, yeah.
Martin, you're full of advice and stuff today.
Yeah.
It's been marvellous. Where
make
have
a
you been
row
all
of
week?
them, add borders. I mean, this, you know, this is quite a small quilt, but there's nothing to stop you buying more fabric and making it bigger. You could use buy more of your designer fabric and just
Yeah.
add borders to it, make it bigger,
That'd be great.
wouldn't it?
Be great.
Yeah.
There's loads of potential with this, and any questions you have, then email
Yeah,
us, info@natashamates.com. We're always happy to do that. Jane, tonight, 1/2 Metre Heavens go live at midnight.
Yes.
Friday should be the PIF show, assuming we don't have any more tech issues with getting that loaded up. The power cuts caused us a problem as well. There's bank holiday deals over the weekend. Keep an eye out for the Friday newsletter and any deals. Monday, we have a pre-recorded show, but it's a special one. That there Lisa Chandler with Natasha.
Oh, lovely.
So do make sure you catch that. And Natasha will be here live in the studio with you on Tuesday and Wednesday. And she has got some fabulous, fabulous hardware.
Wonderful, yes. We had a sneak peek yesterday and we
Yeah.
were like, ooh!
I know. We've all had a bit of a moment with it.
Yeah.
She's also on Create and Craft over the weekend as well. So you'll be fully saturated with all things Natasha
And
in the next few days.
yes.
And in between, she'll be bouncing in a field, getting covered in mud. What
Lovely.
could possibly go wrong? We'll look forward to seeing you very, very soon. Thank you and take care and lots of love.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.